Good evening, and welcome to Holy Chinuch, a pioneering live stream event addressing the pressing issues of wellness and mental health in our community, presented by Yeshiva Schools. My name is Dov Bernadich, and I'll be your host tonight. We're really excited about this event. We're going to see some amazing videos, participate in panel discussions, and help our school raise $500,000 or more. First off, for those of you who don't know me, I should introduce myself. My name is Dov Bernadich. I'm a writer living in Pittsburgh. I've written stories, articles, and scripts for the Museum of Modern Art, Netflix, and perhaps most importantly, Itchakaduzi. I also attended yeshiva as a child, and now my own children go there. When Rabbi Rosenblum came to me, I'm sure after many of his better options had passed, I was pretty anxious about the whole thing. I still am. I've actually been struggling with anxiety and depression since I attended yeshiva schools in the 90s. Back then, my therapy was a snow day, and my emotional support area was a soda machine beneath the back stairs. But I also had caring teachers, mashpiyim to model myself after, and a supportive family. And with their help, I was able to deal with my anxiety, and now I'm hosting this event live. Still, these days, that kind of schooling is really not enough. First off, I'm not nearly as supportive of my own kids as my parents were of me. Second, our children are facing unprecedented emotional and mental strain. The world may not have changed that much, but their access to it has exploded. And along with that comes depression, anxiety, and trauma that's unique to their generation. Now, as I remind my own daughters daily, at least we're not in Ukraine, but with a few finger taps, they can be. They can see the kind of devastating images that we'd only see in Time Life magazines as kids, the kind I still remember to this day, and they can see 100 of those in a half hour on our living room computer. So we know it's not enough to simply help students who step forward and admit they're struggling. Instead, we need to be proactive and rethink how we educate. Part of that starts at home, and Hashem knows we're all trying. But that concern and focus has to be present in school too. And I'm grateful that Yeshiva Schools of Pittsburgh is at the forefront of this movement. Yeshiva's Wellness Division was started 2 years ago, and right now it's varied in its approach to student care. For those who need more hands-on support, the department provides behavioral and learning plans, pull-out support for both academic and social-emotional needs, and free counseling sessions. But we badly need to expand the department to create a broader wellness culture within the school that promotes every child's health. With the funding we received tonight, we're expanding training to teachers, students, and staff, creating enrichment rooms and sensory spaces, and promoting initiatives that benefit the whole student body. To paraphrase family counselor Eli Shapiro, healthy growth doesn't need to start outside comfort zones. It should start within them and be gentle, gradual, and sustainable. We need to create a space where every student can reduce stress and anxiety and learn resilience and grit, and we're looking to create that at Yeshiva Schools. Of course, as our sages have taught us, and as I remind my own daughters daily, nothing of value comes free and easy. Yeshiva Schools understands this. The cost of creating a whole new paradigm for emotional health in the frum world is considerable. We're just under $300,000 right now, and we're hoping to reach at least $500,000 by midnight. It's a lot of money, but we want to do a lot. We're not asking that you give us everything, just a little more than you're used to. And as our mental health professionals have taught us, that's no small thing either. Doing a little more than we think we can is the foundation of growth. It's what helped me rise above my anxiety, and it's why I'm here tonight when I could be at home in Pittsburgh yelling at my kids. By the way, if you guys are watching, hi, listen to Bubby and go to bed. I'd like to start out by thanking our foundation sponsors, the Hashimi and Mars families. I'd also like to thank our mindfulness sponsors, Mr. Zev and Mrs. Liba Rudolph, and COL. They are some of the generous matchers for our campaign tonight. Other sponsors have chosen to remain anonymous, and we're grateful for their help too. We also have around 50 teams out there promoting and collecting for our event tonight, and you can donate to the campaign through whichever one and on whichever level you choose. There are some great ones out there, but I personally would point you to Dov Bernadich as the best MC, a very giving and generous team member, namely myself, put that team together. And if you donate to that account, I'd love to read your words of encouragement, advice, and good humor by the end of the night. Go ahead and have fun with it. You can find it at www.holychinuch.org/DBN_bestMC. I should say that it's no coincidence that Yeshiva Schools of Pittsburgh is striving to become a new model for integrated mental and spiritual wellness. Pittsburgh was already doing that in the 60s. Well, not all of us. I personally wasn't born yet. But one special man was. Rabbi Dr. Avram J. Twersky was breaking down barriers about the stigma of mental health and pioneering approaches to addiction way before it was cool. He was the founder of Gateway Rehab Center, a professor at the University of Pittsburgh, doctor at St. Francis Hospital, a renowned rabbi in our community, and many of his children and grandchildren went to yeshiva schools. His passing last year was a unique tragedy amidst all the sadness of the pandemic, and we're honored as a community to host this event in his memory. We're proud to present Rabbi Dr. Twersky's son, Rabbi Dr. Ben-Sion Twersky, and we'd like you to please pause your charitable giving for just a moment to watch this tribute.
My father grew up in Milwaukee, where my Zayda was the Rov, and he watched my Zayda spending a tremendous amount of time counseling people and guiding them, and in a sense, he was a therapist. My father grew up watching this, and this was something that he wanted to do. In the 1950s, there were many locations that had no Chinuch. Milwaukee did not have their own day school at the time. And to relocate, where would he find a position as a Rov? He then thought, wait a second, I can minister to people much the same way if I go into the field of psychiatry. It was a rarity that somebody from a mainstream from background would be going to college at all. And there was initial resistance from many different pockets of the Frum community. Nothing really substantial until he published a book on domestic violence in the Orthodox community. That book actually led to death threats. The book was banned in many locations. Many of the same notable people who were part of that resistance later on called him that they have various psychiatric issues in their own families, and they called to consult with him. Never did he say, "You cursed me when I was in medical school, now you're coming to me for help." Never said it. He completed medical school in Milwaukee in 1959, did internship there for a year, and when he needed a residency for psychiatry, he only applied to places for residency that were cities that had a Jewish community with Chinuch. And the choice that he made was Pittsburgh. He was one of the parents who jumped into the thick of things immediately, having connected with everybody, from Rabbi Posner to Rabbi Darren. There were constant meetings that were taking place, meetings that addressed the financial issues of the school, the curriculum issues of the school, etc. As the faculty expanded and grew, everybody was tight and close with everybody else. He was always active in it.
There's nothing more valuable to us in the entire world. Not our jobs, not our houses, not our cars, than our children. And we have the awesome obligation to give them the best opportunity for success and happiness in their lives.
He was a trailblazer in terms of being somebody from the Frum community going into the mental health field. And it's a legacy. It's a legacy that we have to learn from.
How do I want to be remembered? What do I want my children to remember? What do I want my grandchildren to remember? I may not be able to give them a great deal of money, but I may be able to give them a sense of pride that this was my father, this was my grandfather, this is what he stood for, this is what he taught.
A beautiful tribute. Rabbi Dr. Twersky, we are all indebted to you. We're also indebted to our amazing teams at home who are working hard to get us to our goal. I just want to point out and thank a few more teams. For those giving in honor of Rabbi Dr. Twersky, the Twersky family has a team. Please also think about donating to the Rita Herman Fan Club in honor of beloved matriarch Rita Herman. There's also high school girls teams from grade 9 through 12 and the high school boys team as well. For those fans of our rising Greenfield community, there are plenty of family teams from Pittsburgh's second best neighborhood to root for. Two other teams happen to be headed up by some of our matchers tonight. Our foundation sponsors are the Hashimi and Mars families, and they also head up the Porch Crew team. Our mindfulness sponsors, Mr. Zev and Mrs. Liba Rudolph, are part of the Rudolph Friends and Family team, and they're joined in their sponsorship by COL Live, who are out there now promoting our event. We're so grateful to our generous matchers. Your support allows this vital campaign to grow and to succeed. 412-521-4072. That was my best friend's number as a kid. 412-422-9961. That was our own number. Everyone in the audience over the age of 35 probably has a good 7 of these numbers rolling around the back of their head. Back when phones were attached to walls, and the only danger they represented was filling your head with phone numbers that pushed out the date of your wedding anniversary. The first cell phone I got was a Motorola Brick. I used it to play Snake in the back of Halacha class. I almost got the Snake to fill up the whole screen once, but now I don't know the difference between Shahia and Hadmana. Today's phones are much more advanced, and that's great because I can actually look up my halacha questions and so much more in an instant. But I can also get lost in a world of toxic bullying, feelings of inadequacy, and angry rants. And that was all just this morning on WhatsApp trying to get people to donate for this campaign. How do we deal with that? Honestly, I don't know, which is why I'm grateful for this next segment. In Virtually Possible, our panel is going to discuss digital citizenship and the possibilities and perils of our internet age. First, let me introduce our experts. Dr. Eli Shapiro is a licensed clinical social worker with a doctorate in education. He is the founder of the Digital Citizenship Project and Keter, and is a nationally renowned speaker and thought leader on issues related to technology, education, and family functioning. Rabbi Moshe Taub currently serves as Mara D'Asra at Young Israel of Holliswood. He's a rabbinic editor and columnist at Ami Magazine, a Menahel in Tells, Riverdale, and he teaches halacha at Beis Yaakov Shevach in Queens. Nachi Gordon is the founder and CEO of Meaningful Minute and the co-host of the Meaningful People podcast, both of which aim to inspire and educate Jews all around the world to bring people closer to their Creator. If you have questions of your own for our panelists, you can WhatsApp them to 412-697-7471. And that's a number you won't have to remember after tonight, so I'll repeat it now. 412-697-7471. Please send in your questions. Don't be reserved. We promise we'll get to as many of them as possible. Dr. Shapiro, Rabbi Taub, Nachi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Dov Ber. You absolutely killed it, and I am so happy to be part of this program. My name is Nachi Gordon. I'm joined by Dr. Shapiro, Rabbi Taub, and we are going to discuss some important topics, most importantly, technology in general. And I just want to jump right in and ask the first question. What are the 2 most practical things parents can do to help their children navigate the challenge of technology? We'll start with you, Rabbi Taub.
Well, first of all, let me say, it's 2 weeks before Pesach, and all the people who are online for this amazing event and fantastic institution, Yasher Koach to all of you, to dedicate time, and really the busiest time of the year, but it is a topic that is vital, and supporting an institution that is crucial. That being said, Pesach really supplies a little bit of the answer. We want our children to help us clean for Pesach and to cook for Pesach. We want our children to be partners in our endeavor. I think the primary tool when it comes to technology is us being partners with our children. It is so important that our children feel comfortable talking to us, that we have an open door policy. If we don't have that relationship with our children, if our children aren't comfortable coming to us with something said online, something they see online, questions about technology, we're doomed to failure. There has to be honest discussion and open discussion between parents and children.
It's interesting, you talk about Pesach giving us the solution. It also, I think, presents in many ways the problem, because the Afikoman gifts often are technology-based. You know, the kids, they're not asking for, pickup sticks, right? They're asking for technology devices. And so I think...
Pickup sticks was really fun, though. That was really fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed.
I did.
Kids today probably are struggling with that, and they really want the latest technology, and that's what they're going to be asking for. So if you're a parent who is considering bringing your children into the world of device ownership, I'm glad you're tuned in today. But as far as 2 practical pieces, exactly what you said, the idea of communicating with your children, the number one influence over children's behavior, both with technology and with so many other things, parents are the number one influence. We've surveyed kids, giving them choices, is it your parents, is it your friends? And it's not that there aren't competing influences, but the single greatest influence are our parents. And the parents, both in communication and in action, are influencing their children. And it really is a combination of both of those. You can't just talk and you can't just do. It has to be both. You have to act in a way that you want your children to act and behave, but also communicate and make it transparent for them. So I think that's one key piece.
Could I, on that one
Please.
piece, before I don't cut you off, I'm anxious to hear the second piece. Rebbitzin Davis, the Rebbitzin of the Young Israel of Hollywood, I believe, in Florida. Mm-hmm. So she shared with me this crazy story, a painful story, and it's not crazy. That's what is crazy about it, because I don't think this is a unique story. So she learns with the Bas Mitzvah girls, like many Rebbitzins do in the shul. And she asked the girls to write an assignment, what is your favorite thing about Shabbos? She wanted to boost their relationship with Kedusha and Shabbos. And one girl wrote, and it really pained the Rebbitzin, and she shared it with me, what she enjoys most about Shabbos is that her parents don't have access to their computers and their smartphones, and they could finally pay attention to me. And I think if we demand our children to put down the iPad and the computer, as you said, we have to be the influence that we want to see them act like.
We certainly have to model that behavior and communicate what it is that we're doing. And a great practical tool that all parents can do, starting, it's a little late for tonight, but starting tomorrow, we do something in my house and we encourage it in other people's homes, the idea of going dark for dinner. Going dark for dinner just means that there's no technology for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That's all it is, but the dynamic that it creates within the house is completely different than when you have technology at dinner time.
But how do you, it's so important. I try to model that behavior. I'm speaking personally now, not as a Rav, but as a parent. I have to do work on my computer. I was working on a Pesach guide, and I have to work on a column, and Shabbos Hagadol Drasha. My kids see me by the computer all the time. How do I both model good behavior and explain to them, well, when I do it, it's different?
So again, I think that transparency piece is important as well. When you go to a computer, you're an adult, you have obligations, you have a kahila, you have questions being asked to you, you have people that you answer to and communicate with, and that's important. Bring your kids in. You talk about the relationship being a two-way street. We always ask our kids, how was your day, what did you do today? Usually they say, it's fine, nothing. Usually that's the response you get. But how often do we share about our day? And that's really, a relationship is a two-way street. So if you're going to be on a device, and with justified reasons for being on a device, communicate that. Say, oh, I got this great shaila that came in about this kashrus issue or this Pesach issue. And bring your children into that experience. So it's not that I can do this and you can't. It's them understanding the dynamic, but it's so important to also take time without the technology, put it away, put it in a separate room, and demonstrate to them and for them that there is a time for technology and a time for not technology.
Speaking to that point, I think that the only reason we're able to have this conversation right now is because there's so much good on social media and and in technology in general. Otherwise, we'd say, let's just get rid of it. There's nothing good there. There is so much good. There's a lot of Torah, there's a lot of money being raised. The list could go on. Are there any parts of technology or any social media platforms in particular that you would say to a parent, this platform, this has got to go. This is absolutely one that needs to be banned. For example, let's say TikTok. What would you guys say about that?
We promised ourselves, we were talking before the show for the audience, take away a little bit of the magic, that we're going to keep this light. We know that technology is something that we've been, and for good reason, we've been hearing about ever since the iPhone was created, certainly in 2010, but even before then. And parents are just being beat over the head, and children are being beat over the head. But that being said, we do also want to have an honest discussion. I think, and Dr. Shapiro, who has done studies, could speak more directly with numbers and graphs and studies. Ironically, well, first of all, TikTok is one that I find very dangerous, personally. Chaim Shmulevitz famously has this idea of Hushim ben Dan, who killed Esav when Esav was asking for the burial plot in Maras Machpelah. and cuts off his head, a very famous medrash, the head rolls in, very famous idea. Reb Chaim says, well, if he was deserving of death, why didn't any of the other Shvatim kill him? And he explains, well, Chushim had one midah, he was deaf. So everybody else slowly evolved into the situation. Esav came, what are you doing here? I came for Hespedim. Why, who's being buried? Maybe I'm buried. And when you slowly evolve into a situation, you get used to it. Chushim and Dan all of a sudden had to hear all the information at once because he was deaf. He wasn't like a frog being boiled in water, and he reacted correctly. And I think TikTok is a great example of something. If 15 years ago, some of the videos of children that are being displayed online would be sold by parents in the street, you would be arrested if these were video cassettes. And I also, ironically, I think, not to get rid of, but WhatsApp and Facebook, as a Rav and other Rabbanim will tell you, can be so dangerous. Dangerous for marriages, for Shalom Bayis, Hamev and Yavin. Those are the three that I would say should at least be extremely monitored, but TikTok is an out for me.
Yeah, but don't get rid of TikTok until you give your donations to this campaign. Yeah. No, this through WhatsApp is one of the challenges with technology is that there's so much positive that can be proliferated and good, and there's challenges as well. And I think one of the keys is being thoughtful and deliberative with how you use technology, when you use technology, and what we were talking about before, the idea of demonstrating when to use it and how to use it, but similarly, it's not just about the content, and certainly TikTok presents an issue with content, but it's the behavior, it's the relationship, it's the compulsivity, the distraction, all of those pieces, present as an issue when it comes to technology. And if we can regulate it, and truthfully for kids, it's really hard. Kids can't really self-regulate their technology use. Many adults can't regulate their technology use. But certainly as parents, the ability, when we give our children devices, and it should be done in a thoughtful and deliberative process, we are taking the achrayus on ourselves to oversee that and help children regulate. We talk about psychological well-being. When kids don't feel they can regulate their behaviors, they don't feel good about themselves. And I've spoken to thousands of kids and asked them, well, what happens when you go play video games? And, what's the plan? Well, I'm going to play video games for 15 minutes. What happens after 15 minutes? Another 15 minutes. And then 2 hours later and 3 hours later. And you don't feel good when you can't regulate the behavior. So it's really incumbent on parents, and it's really that process. I think we all have to ask ourselves on a daily basis, or maybe multiple times a day, is the technology enhancing our lives, or is it serving as an intrusion in our lives? And hopefully we can find ways to have technology serve as an enhancement rather than an intrusion.
I mean, there's certainly a lot of good that came from technology. COVID proved that. How many shiurim went online? My personal shiur, my shul went from a handful of people to many dozens of people, which couldn't have happened without technology. But like Torah itself, Torah, the Gemara says, is a sam ha'chaim. It's a tonic for life. But if used in the wrong way, it's a sam ha'mavis. It's dangerous. And there's nothing wrong, and we all agree, or dishonest to be frank and say there is a sam ha'mavis related to technology. And I wonder, Dr. Shapiro, what you think. There's been a lot of talk over COVID with masks and children who were raised through COVID losing social skills. And people are so open, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, talking about lack of social skills ages 2 to 5 due to masks. Speaking of social skills, and being that it's out there in the ether, have you seen that too much technology, or what age technology has caused development to become arrested in young children who have too much access to technology?
So that's a great question. The relationship between social interactivity and technology is well documented. It's not discussed as much. We just sort of say intuitively, it's distracting, but I can just focus. They actually did a study on middle school kids, and they measured their ability to read facial expressions and social cues. This was UCLA in 2014 or so, and it's been replicated since then. But they measured kids' ability to read facial expressions and social cues, which is the foundation for connectivity. And then they got a baseline. They sent them to sleepaway camp. And there was no technology in sleepaway camp. And so they measured them.
I heard they have camps like that for adults now.
Yeah. So they measured them, at different points over the summer. And what they found was that after only 5 days of being without technology, their ability to read facial expressions and social cues and form meaningful connections with their peers vastly improved. After only 5 days. So that teaches us two very important lessons. One is that digital technology is having a negative impact on our socialization and the quality of our social interactions. But it also teaches us that we can repair it by taking breaks from technology.
Kids are resilient.
And I always ask my audiences, when do you connect best with your spouse, with your children, with your friends? When is that? And the answer is Shabbos.
Well, practically, how are we able to sort of bring Shabbos into the week? Because what I'm hearing here is that before technology, we all may have been a little bit healthier with our relationships and how we communicate with others. And I'm sure both the rabbi and the doctor would say, as if you zone in on even dating in the Chinuch world, how so many messages via text message are completely misinterpreted and have ruined relationships. How are we supposed to bring more of Shabbos during the week if I practically need the technology for what I do for a living?
It's amazing what an ellipsis in a text, the fights an ellipsis could call it. What do you mean by 3 dots and not one dot? What is he trying to say? We should mention, of course, the importance of technology. We're here with Nachi Gordon, the host of one of the most popular podcasts, bringing Torah, meaningful people to the world. I'm just going to go first, only because, especially to this, Dr. Shapiro has so much more information. I work in Telz, as was mentioned. In Telz Yeshiva, the boys don't have any phones, let alone not smartphones. Their parents don't have smartphones. I believe in a perfect world. I don't think this is realistic for the rest of us, but in a perfect world, there'll be Shabbos all week. There wouldn't be such technology. I think founders of major apps agree and Facebook agree that is the perfect world. But it's an imperfect world. Rav Shimon Schwab says, in an imperfect world, you have to inoculate your children. Like a vaccine gives a little bit of the disease, we have to, depending on which neighborhood we live in, give our children a little bit of a taste of technology, not to take it totally away. Otherwise, they're going to be overwhelmed, and it's going to overwhelm the system. They're not going to have the antibodies to fight it. And I wonder, Dr. Shapiro, do you agree that in a perfect world, we would have Shabbos during the week and there wouldn't be this access to technology?
Yeah, I certainly think that we'd all be better off socially, psychologically, behaviorally, spiritually, if we didn't have this distraction. But the reality is, for the vast, vast majority of us, we can't do that. And those that can, it's an amazing thing. Those that can, I think, are living in many ways a richer, more fulfilled life in so many ways. But for the vast majority of us, I think we need to find that healthy balance. And that healthy balance comes by defining social norms within a community, by communicating with communal leadership, by working with a school like Yeshiva Schools does such great work. I'm just going to give a shameless plug for Yeshiva Schools.
He told me this during dinner before the cameras were on.
No, they really, they're programming within the yeshiva, and I've had the opportunity numerous times to meet with the students. Their own self-awareness of their relationship with technology was really more advanced than many of the other schools that I've worked with. And so just being able to identify how technology is impacting your well-being, your functioning, your relationships, your communication, is going to help you make better, more responsible decisions and benefit what technology has to offer and avoid many of the inherent challenges.
You had mentioned going dark for dinner, something that you do in your home. For somebody who's listening or watching and they say, you know what, that is something I want to incorporate into my home, but it might be too late. My kids are completely just so involved in technology. I can't imagine them being able to stop it for 20 minutes during the week. What are some really quick practical tips that they can do to implement that in their home?
So I would start with 5 minutes, or 3 minutes, or 2 minutes.
Eat quickly, basically.
Yes, eat very quickly.
Okay. Joey Chestnut's that, you know?
Yeah, so I think you start, every person is starting from a different point, different abilities, different dynamics. It has to be in a caring and concerned way rather than a punitive and authoritarian way. It has to be in a way that as a family we want to grow together. Let's try for 2 minutes and start with that and then build off of that.
My mother-in-law told me a story that when she was in Beis Yaakov teaching in Beis Yaakov, Montreal, Rebbe Ozban, Zechron Levracha, came to speak to the school. She's a survivor from Telz, Lithuania, started Yavna in Cleveland. In any event, she said it was 50 years ago that she spoke. I remember the 3 things she taught us about Chinuch. I'm just going to share with you one. She said, when I was raising my children, I tried to punish them when they did something wrong. And I would try everything. I would fine them. I would take away their allowance. I would ground them. Nothing worked. And then I decided, what if the midah that they're in error over, I'll fix it myself. And she said, magically, every time, whether it was anger or jealousy, if she worked in it herself, it went away in her children. And I think your question is a great one, and Dr. Shapiro's answer is fantastic. Try with 1 minute, 2 minutes. But I think if a parent demonstrates those activities themselves, I think quicker than you think, you'll see it in your children.
That's two amazing answers. We're going to throw it right back to Dov Ber. We'll be back soon. Don't worry. We're going to answer all of the questions that are coming our way. But now back to Dov Ber.
Yasher Koach to our expert panelists. They'll be back again for another round of discussion in a bit. But let's take a cue from our younger generation and multitask. As much as this program is about learning, it's also about fundraising. We have a goal here to reach tonight, and we're definitely getting there. We currently have $311,906. Sorry, I'm looking over at the thing. $916 of 500, and you know what? I give up. And we'd like to give a shout out to some incredible donors here. Mr. Yosef and Tamar Hashimi and family are our foundation sponsors. Thank you so much for your continuing support. Mr. Zev and Liba Rudolph are our mindfulness co-sponsors. Thank you so much for your support today and over the years. COL is a mindfulness co-sponsor, and we're grateful for your support. We have all done so much tonight, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And we're, of course, all grateful to all our donors over the last 2 days. Every dime counts, and whatever you can give will help. Some of you might be saying this has been an enthusiastic and very convincing appeal by this nervous, overweight man. But still, what exactly am I donating to? We do encourage you to go to our website for more information, www.holychinuch.org. And for those who've sworn off all other website after that last panel discussion, we have a video we'd like to show you. About the same time that Rabbi Twersky was attending college, Yeshiva Schools of Pittsburgh started as an after-school program founded by Rabbi Mordechai Taub. 2 years later, Rabbi Shalom and Rebbetzin Chaya Posner arrived and expanded the school into a full-day dual curriculum program it is today. It was given new life in the 80s by Rabbi Yisrael and Rebbetzin Blumi Rosenfeld, and the care and devotion our predecessors infused in the school sustains it through to today. Their innovation as one of America's first Lubavitch yeshivas has encouraged us to innovate in turn. Even with our limited resources, Yeshiva's wellness program has been able to lay the foundations for success. We've already initiated small-scale programs and shifted the way we think about education, but don't take my word for it.
Yeshiva Schools of Pittsburgh got its start in 1941 when Rabbi Mordechai Dov Altein arrived in Pittsburgh, sent by the previous Rebbe to open a yeshiva, the first Achei Tmimim school outside of New York City. Rabbi Shalom and Mrs. Chaya Posner arrived in 1943 and expanded the school to the full-day dual curriculum program it is today. We started small, but with big dreams. As we approached 80 years of operation, it would have been easy to sit back, put up our feet, and let things continue to run, as they always have. But we know that regeneration is necessary for positive growth. So in 2018, we embarked on Syntagma, a formal restructuring process, which lasted over a year and examined every aspect of our institution. We knew that the creation of a forward-looking school could only come about through collaboration, partnership, and communication, which is why we sought advice and involvement from over 100 parents and other school community members. One of the many action plans that parents created was the formation of a wellness department.
In addition to myself, the Wellness Division currently consists of a behavior intervention specialist for the Early Learning Center, special education coordinators, emotional support staff, as well as master's and doctoral level interns from local universities. Our work focuses on the whole child, which includes supporting children who have behavioral and/or learning needs. Taking a safe and resilient approach, we are working to support our students at the micro level by directly providing counseling and behavioral interventions, as well as at the meso and macro levels by consulting with their administrators, teachers, and parents in identifying ways to better support them in school as well as outside of school.
Part of what's so important about this department is that it strives to meet every student wherever they're at. Some students do require and receive more scaffolded support, and we've made a point to ensure that we also have broader initiatives and programs so that no matter what kind of student you are, you benefit. We're really working to construct a culture of wellness throughout our school that supports and uplifts all equitably and creates an environment where students can feel nurtured emotionally and mentally so that they can thrive socially and academically.
In creating this wellness culture, we had to ask ourselves, what is something that's currently missing from our school that all of our students would benefit from? Mentorship was high up on that list. So starting this past fall, we incorporated coffee and conversation. We reached out to 33 women in the community and asked them to serve as mentors to our high school girls. Once a month, the girls meet up with their mentors, and it's a chance for them to get some one-on-one connection and individualized attention. We've heard wonderful feedback from both the students and the mentors about how meaningful the program is and how much of a difference it makes. Ensuring that students feel they have support in their corner is such a crucial part of this holistic approach to wellness.
There's a well-known quote about education. You don't teach literature, you teach students, which is true. But at the same time, what you always know the most about is your subject. Teachers want to be supportive of student needs, but we might not always know the best way to do that. We're really trying to focus simultaneously on both academic and emotional wellness because those two things are so closely tied together. We take a collaborative approach to this. As a teacher, this means I have the security of knowing I'm not alone in the process. There's a whole team next to me that is communicating, planning, and working in partnership to ensure that both the student and myself are getting the support that we need.
There's a famous quote from Mishlei, Chanoich lina'ar al pi darkai. Educate each child according to their own way. I think for us, that's the ultimate goal of the wellness culture we're working to establish in yeshiva schools. That everyone's ways are given respect and consideration. The right of students to an education extends to receiving that education in an environment that strives to nurture and support them in an equitable, empathetic fashion. We know that we still have a lot of work to do to make these big dreams a reality. We are excited for what's to come and to continue this journey in partnership with everyone in our school community.
That was a beautiful video. And I'm not just saying that because my daughter was in it, but it helps. She was the surly teenager in English class. Hi, Moon. Hi, Muna. Listen to your bubby and go to bed. She's not going to listen. I just want to read out some amazing donations we've had so far today. Anonymous gave us $1,200 with the Schaller sisters. Another anonymous donor gave us $7,200 with the Rudolph family and friends. And Amy and Yaakov Guderson gave us $3,600. Amazing. Thank you very much. We'd like to take a moment now to introduce a very special person. Mr. Yosef Hashimi is a longtime member of the Pittsburgh Jewish community. In addition to being a yeshiva board member, as well as its treasurer and revenue committee chairman, he is the proud parent of 4 graduates and 2 current students of yeshiva schools. He's here with us today as a representative of the foundation sponsors for this event, the Hashimi and Mars families, to make a major announcement about the naming of Yeshiva's Wellness Division. Please give him your full attention.
Thank you, Dov Bear. I'm going to try not to get too emotional. But those of you that had the privilege of knowing my mother, she was hard of hearing. And my mother spent much of her childhood and teenage years feeling isolated and cut off from others. After experiencing such hardship, she was determined that no child should go through similar struggles as she did. And she did everything in her power to make sure that children did not experience loneliness, despair, or isolation. And it's for this reason that I'm so proud to honor her legacy tonight by announcing the official name of Yeshiva's Wellness Division, the Elaine Hashimi Wellness Department. Through its incredible work to create a culture of wellness in Jewish education at yeshiva schools, my mother's greatest hope will be fulfilled, that all children have the chance to grow and learn in an empathetic, warm, and nurturing environment. Yasher koyach to everybody for your donations, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hashimi. May Hashem bless you and your family. While we were announcing the naming of the department, A huge donation actually came through for $25,000. The donation is anonymous, but for whoever you are out there, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And still, we're not done. Everyone else can donate too, and every dollar counts. Please go and donate this very important event for our school and for our families. Speaking of family, I have 3 teenagers. They live on their phones. They know its ins and outs. They speak the language of the internet, and it's a different language than ours. My daughters will come up and explain something she saw on social media to me, and many of the words will not be in English. I understand 0 proper nouns and only a few adjectives and adverbs. And don't try to learn it either. It'll be replaced with an entirely new language in a couple of years. But for all of that, I'm proud of the people they're becoming. They go to Yeshiva schools, and they've attended so many digital citizenship classes. And sure, they've been surly throughout, but they also listened. They know about the dangers of the internet, and they even warn the younger kids what not to watch in that peculiar language of theirs. I think that's one of our school's qualities. As the unconditional parenting blogger and speaker Blimmy Heller says, it's important to meet our children where they are, not where we want them to be. Yeshiva Schools believes in that, and we hope you'll join us tonight in showing that you believe it too. Speaking of the language of the internet, let's go back to our panel on digital citizenship. Dr. Shapiro, Rabbi Taub, and Nachi will be continuing their discussion. We no longer have time to take questions for the virtually possible panel, but I'm sure they still have plenty to say about this fascinating topic.
Dover, thank you once again. You're doing an incredible job. You're making us all laugh over here, so keep it up. Just to jump back into our conversation over here, obviously with technology, there's a lot of platforms and sites that are just outright inappropriate, ones that our children can't go on or they just can't be on. And it's acceptable amongst everybody if they can't be on that. But nowadays we have other sorts of media that is acceptable. It could be news, it could be WhatsApp statuses, where certain images and videos are being shown which are extremely graphic. For example, the other week, unfortunately, there was a terrorist attack in Eretz Yisrael. And one example is a video going around of the videos of the attack. And nothing blurred, no videos withheld. Does this just open season on media and open sharing of whatever comes to our phones lead to a big issue of desensitization or a myriad of other issues?
So it's interesting. We actually surveyed probably close to 4,000 middle schoolers, 5th through 8th grade, and asked them if they've seen imagery online that disturbed them, that really had affected their emotional well-being. And we were shocked that the number was 63% of 5th through 8th graders. Higher in the 8th grade, lower in the 5th grade. But the degree to which that they were being exposed to graphic violence and imagery that not just that their parents would disapprove of, but that had a negative impact on their emotional well-being is remarkable. And it's not even the sort of thing that a filter is going to help you with. The quote-unquote kosher news websites will post videos of tragedies, and today with all the cell phone cameras and car dash cam videos and the police body armor cameras, and the CCTV in neighborhoods, almost every disturbing incident that could possibly happen is being recorded and is the only protection from our kids seeing it from a kosher news website is like a sash across that says, warning, graphic content.
You don't want to see this.
Right. For most kids, Dover was talking about they speak a different language. When they see warning graphic content, usually that means click here.
Yes.
In some dialects of kid, it's like click here now. But it's basically, that's the issue. And they're being exposed to imagery that adults shouldn't see. It's so disturbing and really impacts one's subjective well-being. And, there really should be some sort of push to understand that if you are sharing Jewish news content and espousing an approach of kosher content, that it's not just that we don't show certain images, it's that we don't show anything that is really going to be disturbing or detrimental to the well-being of kids.
I think like CBS and NBC and ABC, at a certain point, although they're competitors, at some point in the 70s and 80s, they got together and they realized they're going to have to meet somewhere on certain ground rules. There are certain things, images they don't show, news information they don't share. And I think that the big mafia families of Jewish, I don't mean mafia in a negative sense, Vasas Nais, Yeshiva World, COL Live, I'm sure I'm forgetting some, should get together and meet over policy. I know the rabbinic editors of the various magazines and newspapers from time to time have met. So no one's looking over the shoulder and we could come to common ground. And I think that's number one. Number two, your question opens up a Pandora's box because it speaks to, for the parents watching, this is not about trusting our children. It's not just about TikTok or this app or that app. There are wholly kosher and available websites. An example that I don't like to give, but in these talks I have to give is YouTube. I've had children, teenagers, who lost their faith in God from YouTube videos. So, you look on what your child's looking at, and they're on Yeshiva World, and you can see graphic images. They are on YouTube, and they could be watching atheists who unfortunately are changing their mind without any counter-programming. And finally, speaking to this Pandora's box that you just opened, there's issues of jealousy. What they see on WhatsApp, inappropriate image, is not just someone being shot. It's also the seeming perfect life of somebody else. The audience watching, you could raise your hand if you've been angry at family members and loved ones in the past month. You'll all raise your hand. If you, spoke Lashon Hara about family members or loved ones in the past month, you'll raise your hand. But if I ask you, have you been jealous, severely jealous of family members and loved ones in the past month, no one raises their hand. Well, either you're malachim, or it's such a powerful emotion we can't even admit it to ourselves.
Or they're lying.
Right. It's the one midah in the Torah. It's in the Aseres HaDibros. It's why they hate the state of Israel. It's why they hate the Jews. And I'm sure Dr. Shapiro could talk about this FOMO and define it for everybody in a moment. But I'll end this and ask Dr. Shapiro to speak about this in a moment. I just want to say one story, Dr. Shapiro, about jealousy. A therapist in a school told me that she was outside her house and a family was getting ready to go to a wedding. And they're all made up, and the mother is screaming to get to the car, we're going to miss the photography, and the Kala's crying, and her mascara is running, and the boys just back from Israel are screaming, you took my hat, you took my, you have my tie. And the mother comes out and goes, we have to get a picture, we're all together, we have to get a picture. So the Kala quickly fixes her mascara, and they switch hats, and the father says, everybody calm down, and they smile for the picture. A moment in time. And she imagined 3 hours later, they're going to post that picture on Facebook. And some family's going to look at it and say, why can't we be a happy family like them? So if you could speak to this issue of jealousy and FOMO.
I just want to first just to bring home that message more and bring the conversation to that. There's sort of a influencer culture on Instagram specifically where there's a whole new wave of influencers in the frum world specifically, whether they're fashion influencers or food blogger influencers. And unfortunately, while many of them do a great job, they're only showcasing a very, very tiny percentage of their life. And they're not showing the down moments, it's highlights. And for kids, or even adults, let's be real, it's not just about kids. It's adults who are watching that. It leads to that jealousy like you mentioned. It leads to that sort of chas v'shalom depression of the life that this person's living. And if they were to know even 5% more of what's going on in that influencer's life, it would change the picture completely. So it seems to be like there's an unhealthy cycle going on.
It's interesting. Particularly adolescent girls are most influenced their emotional well-being by seeing things like this on Instagram, and they're at the highest risk. But FOMO, it's an interesting thing. It's not just what we're seeing, it's almost existentially when it comes to technology, whether it's these devices or these apps or these vacations or these trips, all of it sort of comes together in one device through an app or with the device. And we see so often, ideally, when it comes to technology, we want to postpone as much as possible for kids getting their own personal devices. It's interesting, we tend to think of technology as an adolescent issue because that's when they tend, or pre-adolescents at this point, where they're getting their own devices, but they're utilizing their parents' devices even at a much younger age. So they're certainly being exposed to a lot of the FOMO through the media, but they're also experiencing...
Could you translate what FOMO is?
Yeah, sure. Fear of missing out. Fear of missing out for a lot of the kids, but also the idea of getting devices and the idea of Everybody, you talk about TikTok. Well, everybody has TikTok. I think one of the challenges for parents is the "but everyone has" scenario. And parents don't want their child to be the one not to have. And so it's really interesting that it's not even the device or the app or the game itself that drives the demand for it, but it's the perception that there is a social demand for it that drives the social demand for it. And so you have great organizations like MUST, Mothers Unite to Stall Technology, the idea of postponing technology ownership for as long as possible and influencing those social norms. So influencing the social norms can be not only about devices themselves, but also about the apps and what they're exposed to in seeing other people's, quote unquote, Instagrammed lives.
Right. So you would recommend, I mean, we could be candid and we could say that it's unlikely that many people can just drop their smartphones, move to a farm, and never look at technology again. But what we want to discuss is sort of ways that parents and ways that adults for themselves or parents for their kids can help their kids navigate that and control that more. So would you say, what are some resources that can help parents do that?
Well, the first step is postponing as long as you can.
What's the ideal age? What's the ideal age that a kid should be getting? I mean, I imagine that varies by community and
I was at the Aguda convention this past November, and someone noted to Rabbi Feinstein that boys are getting their driver's license at younger and younger ages. And it just seems, it used to be, let's say, 21, and now it's like 17 as soon as they become eligible. What is the ideal age to get a driver's license?
Is that a mushal?
So he said, he goes, 27,
Yeah.
So, then he went on to expand on his thinking on it. But when it becomes necessary is really what he went with. But someone came out of that speech and said, did you heard what Ruvain Paskin, that people shouldn't get their driver's license till 27, which wasn't really where he was going with it. But the idea of really assessing when the need is there. And so it's really not about a chronological age. It really is about when it becomes necessary, when the social demands are dictating. As long as we can postpone it and influence social demands, that's ideal. But once it gets to a point, it's not even about the age, but it's really about the process of indoctrination when it comes to technology. It's the process that parents engage in educating their children about responsible technology use and what those expectations are. Parents need to convey that. And certainly school programs that are doing wellness programming like Yeshiva Schools to educate kids to understand and be aware. I did have the opportunity to visit maybe about a year ago and talk with some of the students there about their relationship with gaming and their ability to identify some of the video games that they play and how it makes them feel. And I was really amazed at the self-awareness that they had when it came to engaging in certain activities online, how it made them feel, and they were able to communicate that. And so I think that goes back to your original point that you started with, the ability creating an environment where kids can talk to parents or kids can talk to people at school about their relationship with technology and how it's making them feel.
On that note, I mean, I think parents are somewhat in the dark. I'm going to use an example.
And not just for dinner.
And not just dark for dinner.
Yeah.
That I'm going to admit my own ignorance when I first heard it, and I hope it's okay that we say this term, Squid Game. That parents have to be informed about what is online, what kids, and what's popular in yeshivas, and what kids are talking about. How do we deal with the fact, and I'm not even speaking now as a Reb, I'm asking you as a parent and asking you as a professional. When I was growing up, a Disney movie was a safe space, so to speak. Obviously, not every community would smile upon that, but generally it was a pretty safe space. We're heading toward territory that we've never been before. What is the resource for a parent today? And what outlet? Because I have a difficult time answering this question. We all admit that technology is here to stay. We all admit there are great things that we get from technology. And we also admit that our children are saturated with it. We want to limit them. Limit them with what? What would be considered a kosher outlet?
So, I also use online resources to figure out what is okay, what is not. So I think the first thing that parents need to recognize when your child comes to you and asks you for this game or this app or to watch this movie through the phone, let's start with apps and games. When you go to the App Store, there will be a recommendation before you actually download it. There'll be a recommendation for what age is appropriate for this app. And you can look up TikTok or Instagram and see what age. It's a lot higher than what most kids that are getting it are. So I think parents, one, you need to be aware of what it says in the app. Two, even the age recommendation for the app, you might have your own sensitivities within your community as far as just because the app says this age is the right age doesn't mean that you might feel that way as well. So you really need to understand that. Some of the resources that I use, Common Sense Media is a great website, really goes in depth. So when it came to Squid Games, I knew nothing about it. I thought it was some innocuous, the kids were talking about it. But then when you go on to Common Sense Media and you put in Squid Games, it gives you a really sobering explanation of what it is and why you don't want your kids to watch that.
A question that people are, messaging the phone number that Dov Ber had mentioned, and messages are coming in. And the message that was sent in is, I worry that social media gives our teenagers a sense that they always need to be totally perfect at all times. Perfect, witty, smart, good-looking, on trend. They are so hard on themselves for any perceived flaws. How do we remind teenagers that growing up is by definition messy, and that the lives that influencers display are carefully curated and not reality?
I think that the more we talk about technology and they recognize if you give kids the space to speak about it and explore it in a safe place, they're going to come to that recognition. I think for many kids, when it comes to talking about technology with adults, they're used to the adult in the room being critical and saying, we don't give them the opportunity to speak because they know what the position is going to be. So we need to give them that opportunity in a safe space to talk about it, to explore it. And if we do, they're going to be able to hear, and really logically, they all know that what they see on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok is not real. They know that because they've...
Deep inside? Or...
They know, and I think if you give them the opportunity to talk about it, no one really thinks that what they see on Instagram is real life. Because
I would push back on that, I think.
Okay, please.
I imagine that if someone is closely following their favorite athlete or their favorite influencer, they do actually, especially if they're younger, they do believe that this person is this. This person doesn't have the challenges like everyone else has. This person has fame. This person has money. You think that...
I think recent events, that have been publicized demonstrate the fact that celebrities are often caught doing things that don't reflect them in the best light. Those are the opportunities to share with our kids. It's really not all fun and games, and you see people that were the biggest stars in Hollywood one day, and the next day they're persona non grata when it comes to those opportunities.
I think a lot of these issues really are a tale as old as time. Jealousy, taiva, kavod. Technology has enhanced them. They've forced our children to lose their innocence a little bit earlier. It's magnified these issues, certainly, and teenagers don't respond well to such volume raising. But that being said, these are issues we've always dealt with, and I think we keep going back to this honest dialogue. When I try at times to speak about my own issues with dealing with technology, whether it's time or whether even if it is jealousy. I think a lot of these issues are old. I think communication with our children, and it's getting harder and harder. A mechanech told me she was on a class trip and the kids were sitting on their phones. Why they were allowed to have smartphones on a class trip, I don't know. And they're going on this trip to wherever it was, Niagara Falls, and she says, David, why aren't you talking with your friends on the bus? And he's texting, he goes, I am talking with them. So making conversation is difficult, even more so today. But I think if we do that, this very difficult challenge of jealousy online could be helped. It can't be fixed. Right. It is a process teenagers have to go through, made harder with online activity. But dialogue is vital.
An important discussion that we had during the break is, as parents, is it okay, and to what extent is it okay for you to sort of be spying on your children? Going through their messages, going through search history, going through pictures, seeing what they're doing, especially if they don't know about it.
It's my phone. I mean, with my children, if I give them a phone that I pay for, me and Dr. Shapiro have a little bit of a disagreement on that point. I think maybe you'll tell me. But if I'm paying for the phone, I tell my child, this is my phone that you're using. and we have access to it. I think they're very well aware of that. I don't think there's any issue.
I hear that, but having access is different than, when I say the word spy, I mean with what it means. You know, looking through their messages without them maybe even knowing. It's one thing if your child gives you the phone and says, "Yeah, I know you're looking through this," but back-ended ways to do that, is that okay?
So is that a halachic question, or I think there's two issues?
No, so I would say, look, spying implies covert.
Right.
And I don't think that parenting on any level should be covert. It's not spying, it's parenting. And when you give children devices, I think the only point we disagree on is if you're paying or not paying. If your child is living in your house, then this is part of the dynamic, the expectations that it's going to be, and you have technology and you have that privilege, then it's not going to be covert, it's not going to be private, and it's something that we need to help guide our children. If we don't see the conversations or the content or the behaviors that they're engaging in, we can't guide them appropriately.
Trust is earned. You start off on a three-wheeler, you slowly take away so as my children get older, of course, they know I'm not going to be looking at their emails anymore. But if a child is, 11 years old and a parent says I have to give my child their space, it's not for me to look at their emails, it's sakanas nefashos.
And at one point, if someone, as we mentioned, technology is being given to children at younger and younger ages as time goes on, are there any character traits or midas within children that a parent should look out for and say, now my child is ready, or to the contrary, my child is not ready for this smartphone, having shown me what they've shown me?
So there are certainly kids that are going to be at higher risk than other kids. So kids that have a predisposition towards anxiety, towards depression, they are more likely to develop unhealthy relationships with technology. The biggest predictor for texting addiction is social anxiety. So if you have social anxiety, then you're just more likely. So even amongst parents looking at your kids, you're going to see some of your kids develop a more dependent relationship on their technology and other kids less so. And a lot has to do with that sort of predisposition of their own personality and traits. And parents need to approach technology differently for each of their children. It can't just be a blanket rule. This is the rule. And I always tell parents that are worried about, well, my child's impulsive and they can't regulate, and I need to give them a smartphone. I always tell them, you're worried about the smartphone, worry about them when they want a driver's license. Are you going to give the same child the opportunity, if they're impulsive and don't demonstrate good decision making, are you going to let them take the car out? I think you'd be cautious about that too.
It's such a universal problem. I don't have the answer. I do know that I view technology, as I made clear in the first half, as a b'diavad, something that exists, that it's a reality. I wish it didn't exist. Therefore, at a certain age, depending on your community and your hashkafic background, but that child is not going to be playing outside so much anymore. You are taking away a certain innocence from a child at the moment you give them that device. And be on top of it.
What you just said, though, about technology being a b'diavad, I think that when something is a b'diavad, it can make people feel a little bit b'diavad.
Unnecessary b'diavad.
Unnecessary.
Well, Chaim Kanievsky was just nifter.
Right.
His father, the Stipler Gaon, just to explain what I mean by a b'diavad. It's very important, even when we do something, to recognize why we're doing it. The Stipler said, when Mashiach comes, we're not going to have cars. The amount of schusim, the amount of merits we give up when we get into a car and drive on a highway, it's so dangerous. We're putting ourselves at risk. In a perfect world, it wouldn't exist. Is he suggesting you shouldn't drive a car? Of course not. It's a reality. But we're very careful about it, and we try to we never stopped in 1976 with the airbag. We didn't stop in 87 with the anti-braking system. We kept trying. Let's make it safer. Let's make it safer. And now we have self-driving cars. And let's make those safer and those safer. Because when you recognize something as a b'diavad, it doesn't mean we don't have it. It means we're going to keep trying to be better. So I think by viewing technology as a b'diavad, never be resigned to it. Never think that we've reached perfection, that we've arrived. That's all I mean. It could always get better. Our personal relationship with technology could get better. Our children's relationship, apps that filter could get better. YouTube Kids could get better. Games could get better. TikTok, we should never become resigned. and we should remain vigilant. And that could only be if we view it as a b'diavad. My children some of them have iPads. I myself, as chatoydi maskariyim, I have a smartphone. So for those hearing me say it's a b'diavad and thinking I'm telling you to flush it down the toilet, don't. Send it to me and I'll sell it on eBay. But that's not what I mean. I mean that by knowing it's a b'diavad, we'll realize it's imperfect and we'll keep building on it.
I would like for each of you, Rabbi Taub, Dr. Shapiro, and thank you so much for spending so much time on this topic, to sum up in 3 bullet points. If you could focus on a positive end of technology and what parents could do if kids are watching, what they could do. 3 bullet points on to sum up this session.
I would say chibub, love. Children today, more than any generation, need love. They need hugs, they need kisses. Something that even I as a parent could do more. We could, no matter how much you hug and kiss your kid, do it more and tell them you love them. Because there are many people with fake love out there. And that love should only come from you. And dialogue. Dialogue, love, and then finally influence. The way you act, your children are going to mirror. Chibub, love, dialogue, and action. They're going to imitate your action.
So I think that one of the goals that we should have with our children, just telling kids to get off the devices or spend less time with them or not be as dependent on it is one step. But if we're not replacing it with an activity, with something, with going out, I'm always envious of people that live in warmer climates because I think there's more opportunity for them to go out and play ball with their kids. But even that idea of just spending more time, going out for walks. You can't just say don't go on the devices. You have to provide alternative opportunities. So I think that's one big piece of it. Being thoughtful and deliberative with how you approach your family dynamics with technology. What we said before, going dark for dinner is I think something that we can all implement, even if it starts at 1 minute and then build up from there. But also recognize, I think the point was made really well, that when you're retrofitting something, it can't just be about the kids. It has to be a family project. As a unit, and then being transparent as well. If you as a parent are utilizing technology, you want to model appropriate behavior. Part of modeling appropriate behavior with it is saying, I need to respond to some of my emails, whatever it might be, sharing with your children, and then I'm all yours. And then really setting that time aside to spend with your kids. So I think that transparency, spending time with your kids, and being thoughtful and deliberative around the technology.
Dr. Shapiro, Rabbi Taub, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And now I'm going to send it back to Dov Ber.
Thank you, Dr. Shapiro, Rabbi Taub, and Nachi. I've learned a lot tonight, and I hope our audience has too. We've also made a lot tonight. Thanks to your donations, we're now at $367,000 and change. But as you know, there is so much more we can do. We're trying to get to $500,000, and honestly, with the price of gas, what we have now will maybe get us back to Pittsburgh and Rabbi Rosenblum's van. We're really working here to make something special, and I know people say every bit counts, but it's true. It really does. As in wellness, so in charity campaigns. We move forward leap by leaps and bounds, but also one small step at a time, and these small steps often mean the most. If everyone watching gave just $20 right now, we would hit our goal and beyond. Please do keep giving. In the meantime, in these next segments, we're going to hear from actual teenagers. Privacy and the ability to speak truthfully are both super important to teenagers, and we're respecting that. Yeshiva Schools asks our teens to anonymously submit questions for our panel of experts. A few brave volunteers will read the selected questions to our moderators. First up are our high school girls. Now, I have 3 girls in high school, and honestly, they scare me. I grew up in a family of all boys. I'm just now, after 19 years of marriage, beginning to understand a little bit of my wife, but my daughters confuse me to no end. Their thoughts and actions are so much more complex than my sons. When they ask me something, the only answer I know for sure that is correct is go ask your mother. Now, some of that's a joke, but not all. Fathers and men in general can speak only so much to how women feel. And women, especially young women, have long been marginalized voices in our larger society and our own Hasidic world. Some of that is in deference to our Torah and the traditions we hold dear. But there's a perceived tension. How do we empower young women to approach our modern world and also imbue innate and strongly held values of Judaism? Yeshiva Schools is taking on that task, and that's no easy feat. Thankfully, our panelists today are both excellent moderators and inspiring role models. Dr. Debbie Ackerman is a licensed clinical social worker with years of experience in private practice and teaching. She specializes in addiction recovery, trauma, and family work, and is a public speaker educating various communities and professionals across the country. Mrs. Leah Herman has been a teacher for over 20 years and has taught Yeshiva High School students for over a decade. She graduated from Chatham University with a degree in psychology and is currently enrolled in Yeshiva University's Wurzweiler School of Social Work. I think it's pronounced Wurzweiler, actually. For the last 3 years at Yeshiva Schools, she has run Stand Together, an initiative that inspires and equips youth to take action against the stigma associated with mental illness and substance use disorders. We're honored that Dr. Ackerman and Mrs. Herman have taken time out of their schedules to talk to our girls. Let's listen now.
Hi, my name is Esther. Here's a question. Resilience comes out of necessity. Doesn't teaching and promoting resilience as the best way to cope teach unhealthy habits such as suppressing feelings and emotions, staying in abusive situations, not confronting the root of the problem, etc.?
It's actually the opposite. When you pull from your resilience, when you kind of pull from the strength that you have, you're taking the courage to not stay in an unhealthy situation. You're taking the courage to actually talk about an uncomfortable situation. You're taking the courage to make a change, whether that's a change in your thought, a change in your behavior, or a change in your action. So pulling from that strength, and I often like to conceptualize it as one of those like little Shabbos tea lights, right? If that is what the light burning inside you, sometimes that light can sputter and it can go out. But if you kind of cradle it and you put your hands around it and you allow it to rekindle, that flame is going to reignite. And we do know that a tiny amount of light can illuminate a huge amount of darkness. So I really think that it's a very important question, but it's actually the opposite. Taking what you have, taking the strength that Hashem gave you, taking what you are actually inborn with, is the thing that's going to allow you to go down to the root problem, to make the change that you need, and to not stay in a situation which is really not good for you.
Hi, I'm Basia. How should we deal with a family member or a close contact who is abusing drugs? How can we approach them or explain to others?
When people live with addiction, the other family members do what we call enable it. And it doesn't mean that they're doing it on purpose, and it doesn't mean that they're not trying to do the best that they can do to save themselves. Enabling means that the person with the addiction is kind of the central figure in the family, whether it's a father, whether it's a mother, whether it's a brother, an aunt, an uncle, and every single person plays a role around that person that keeps them doing what they do. We don't control what they do. We definitely don't control what people with addiction do. We didn't cause it, and we are most certainly not going to cure it. Those are the 3 C's of recovery. You didn't cause it, you are not going to cure it, and you cannot control it. So when people come to me and they say, well, I live with somebody that has addiction, what should I do? My first answer is get into recovery yourself. Because if the person with the addiction does not want to get help, and many of them do not, you, as the family member, can choose to get help. And if 1 or more people in the family gets help, then the entire system is going to change. That comes from what we know as family system theory, which is if you change one part of the system, everybody else in that system will be affected in a way. So if you change it for the positive, if you yourself get into recovery, then by force of that family system, everything in your family is going to change.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
When you say go into recovery,
right,
what does that mean?
Basically, that means join a 12-step movement. And 12-step movement was actually started by 2 people who had very bad alcoholism. And they discovered that by talking to each other, one alcoholic talking to another, through their experience, strength, and hope, they were able to help each other stay sober. Today, 12-step movement, which is not only for people with addiction, but for their family members, is a worldwide movement with thousands and thousands of meetings that are free. You don't have to pay. You never have to say your name. 87 years, it remains an anonymous organization. Part of what keeps people staying in these addicted relationships is the shame and the stigma that surrounds the disease of addiction. There is not one disease on the planet that carries with it as much shame as addiction does. Addiction affects more people in our country than cancer, heart disease, and diabetes combined. And the Jewish community, our numbers are absolutely the same as the general population. The difference is, because of the stigma that surrounds it, we don't go for treatment.
So I'm listening to this through the ears of a lot of my students, and if they have a family member who is struggling with addiction, and they don't feel like I could just go online and call the number of an AA meeting, what are other things they can do to get into recovery or to give themselves support, especially because there's so much shame and stigma surrounding it? It can be a very lonely place.
Yeah. For teenagers, there's something called Alateen, which is for teenagers that are dealing with somebody in their life that has addiction. And there is really nothing better than walking into a room full of people, knowing that you are absolutely 100% guaranteed your anonymity, and that there are people there who are really going to understand what's going on. If that is really not something that you wish to do, then I do urge you to find a therapist and find somebody who specializes in addiction and who can help you understand how you can take care of yourself. Because it's kind of like living through a war. People with addiction they're really good people.
Hi, I'm Aviva, and my question is, to feel that you have nothing to give is a scary place to be in, especially as a Chabad Chassid. I know I have the capacity to work more and be more motivated. I want to be able to be more present, but don't know how to do it. What should I tell myself to motivate myself to work more?
This is a really good question, because many students have told me that when they're struggling, a lot of the advice that they get that they receive from the grown-ups in their lives is to help others and do more. And what they're feeling is they're completely depleted and having a hard time getting through the day. The thought of trying to help someone else is so overwhelming because they can't even help themselves. So it's a little bit of a mixed message from what they're learning, and well-meaning people are telling them, if you want to feel good, do good, which works in a lot of situations. But what if someone is having a hard time caring for themselves and they still want to fulfill the mission of making this world a better place and being a chassid and lighting up the world and doing all the good things, and yet there's this struggle of, I just don't know how to get through my days?
I think one of the things that many people struggle with is the more religious you are and the more devout you are in your service to Hashem, and the more you really immerse yourself in working for the klal and helping Hashem, which is a very lofty and wonderful goal, you're not going to ever feel badly, or you won't get depression, or you won't get burnt out, or you won't get tired. And that's not realistic. We are human beings, and we have to, first of all, accept that. In order to help anybody, you have to first help yourself. You cannot give to somebody if you yourself are depleted. If you envision yourself as a car and you're trying to take 6 passengers to their destination, if there's no gas in your tank and there's no oil in your, what's it called, the oil pump, I'm from Detroit, I know nothing about cars, and your tires are flat, your car's not going to move. That is you. If you are not in a position yourself, physically, emotionally, spiritually, cognitively, to give to someone else, it's not going to happen. So the first love that you have to have is self-love. The first care that you have to have is self-care. And many times I get this question of, well, that's just selfish. That's selfish. The Torah teaches you not to be selfish. I want to be and do for other people. I can't be selfish. Anything that has to do with self-care is not selfish, because self-care is what you are doing so that you can continue to give to somebody else. Selfish is an act that you do that only benefits you.
I think that's very helpful, because I know from talking to so many students, teenagers have a lot of demands put on them, and they don't often feel that they deserve to care for themselves beyond what they're doing, because they have demands at home, demands from school, and you know what happens at whatever's left, they take care of themselves, or they feel ashamed or guilty that they are doing something for themselves. So I think it's a slow shift. I think that all of you listening, it's not like you're going to hear this and it's just going to be like, okay, I know what to do. But I think it's something we have to start changing how we think, is this going to help me be a better person for myself and other people? And that can slowly shift how we think about ourselves.
Hi, I'm Esty. My question is, what are some good ways to ground yourself?
I love this question. And it will differ from person to person, so of course we want to hear your perspective, but it will look different from student to student and year to year. But what are some suggestions that you could give us to help strengthen ourselves, support ourselves, bolster ourselves?
So the first thing to ground is to accept who you are and how wonderful you are, quite frankly, really how wonderful you are. Get up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, you know what? I'm really wonderful. I'm a special person. I'm beautiful. I'm smart. I'm a Borei Elokim. I am made in the image of Hashem. I'm perfect. I'm great.
Thank you, Dr. Ackerman and Mrs. Herman, and the entire girls' school for those questions. I personally know that I am just as confused about how my daughters feel as before, and that's okay. But how much money would you give to understand what your kids are going through? I know for me it is way more than $500,000. We are currently at 73% of our goal tonight, and we are aiming for $500,000. And by the way, if you've already given, you can give again. As I understand, there's no law against it. Why don't you try it? Go ahead and donate to Dove Bear is the Best MC a second time, and let me know how it makes you feel. Remember, you can make a comment with your donation, and I would love to read it at the end of the night. I think if you come away from this event with just the sense of moving beyond your boundaries and doing something a little more for mental health, that would be an amazing feeling. Speaking of amazing, I'm proud to introduce our keynote panel, Two Halves of a Holy. Now, I think I know where my kids are emotionally. I'm there almost every day of their lives. I have changed so many diapers, bandaged so many boo-boos, and had so many interesting conversations with them that I think I can safely say I know my kids. And I know I'm not alone. Parents everywhere are nodding their heads right now in agreement, and many are probably also changing diapers as we speak. Still, I think I can honestly say I only know about 70% of my kids' internal lives, and as they get older, that number drops precipitously. Interestingly, a solid 70 with a steep decline in the teen years also accurately reflects my grades at Yeshiva Schools. But there are some people out there who do know things about our kids that we don't. It's not 70%, but it's a 5% or a 10% that can only add to our understanding. And what's more, they can know a lot more than we do about how to help our children in ways we may not be able to, but they need our help. For a wellness culture in schools to be effective, it's not just that we need the teachers to go to a few seminars or the students to take an extra class. Parents have to be on board, communicating and collaborating. Administrators, teachers, and parents are all partners in the education process. But it's a complex process. How can it best be accomplished? Rabbi Dr. Shimon Russell is a psychotherapist and the former clinical director of Our Place, a drop-in center for struggling teens. He also founded and directed Tikva, a seminary serving the needs of struggling young women from Orthodox home. He is the main speaker and guide of Kesher Nafshi, an international organization supporting Orthodox parents of struggling children, and the chief consultant and supervisor of Fresh Start, an innovative trauma recovery center serving the unique needs of the Orthodox community. Rabbi Yossi Rosenblum is a veteran educator and a global innovator in Jewish education. He's the creator of the Zeckelman Standards, benchmarks used to shape best practices in Judaic studies. He served as principal of the Yeshiva Boys School for over 25 years and has been head of the Yeshiva Schools for the past 5 years. He was also my principal growing up, and I didn't turn out half bad. I do owe about $30 in Knesset, but he told me that if I did this tonight, he'd take half off. The panel will be taking questions from our online audiences, so please text your questions to 412-697-7471. Again, WhatsApp your questions to 412-697-7471. Rabbi Rosenblum, Rabbi Russell, it is a pleasure to see you both here tonight.
Thank you, Dove Bear. At this point, I'm canceling 50% of the knas. That means you owe me $15. We'll see how the rest of the evening goes. Thank you for coming from Pittsburgh. Very special thank you and welcome to Rabbi Shimon Russell. The way I would introduce him is a rabbi, a therapist on a mission. Rabbi Russell represents the hundreds and thousands of teenagers with whom he's had countless conversations. And he represents them to Klal Yisrael. And we are listening. Thousands of us are listening carefully to what Rabbi Russell has to offer. A couple of points before we actually begin our conversation.
Sure.
First of all, the questions that were chosen for this evening. I came up with a couple of the questions. I forwarded to you. You're aware of some of the questions. And then the administration at Yeshiva Schools of Pittsburgh was involved with writing some of these questions. What we actually did was we played a recording of one of Rabbi Russell's presentations. We stopped at every 10 minutes, and then we reflected on what he had said and how we could implement those ideas in our school.
Beautiful.
And the administrators sitting there together last week formulated these questions, which we're going to present to you today. Because today's session is titled Two Halves of a Holy. There's the parents, the home, and there's the school. And how do we take the truths, the fundamental ideas that you present so eloquently in all of your presentations, and how do we actually implement it into a school setting? How do we bring the two halves of the holy to work cohesively, l'toivas, for the well-being of our children? I also want to mention, before we even begin, that teaching today, particularly post-COVID, it's heroic. Nothing less than heroic. And I want to begin by giving a shout out to those who have Mesiras Nefesh and come to school every day in the most challenging times to work with our young, starting from the early learning center, from the preschool all the way through high school. So let's begin.
Okay.
Rabbi Russell, on COL, Chabad on Live, actually one of the sponsors of tonight's event, there was an article, a very painful article, titled, "There's No Such Thing as a Trusted Adult." And in this article, a social worker talks about a conversation that she had with her nephew. "Several days ago, I received a phone call from a close nephew of mine who is a good bacher. I was surprised that he was calling, but when I heard the panicked fear in his voice, my social worker's antennas went up. And he shared what was going on in his yeshiva. Instinctively, I responded, 'Have you spoken to the Anhala or a trusted adult?' He laughed cynically. 'Aunt Rivki, there's no such thing as a trusted adult.'" Reb Shimon.
Yeah.
Two questions to begin our discussion tonight. Sure. Question number one is, how do we become trusted adults to whom our Talmidim and Talmidas feel comfortable approaching with their questions and challenges? And question number two, it's a long one, but we'll get started. We'll dive right into it.
Sure.
Question number two, how do we get out of the cycle of blame and distrust between the parents and the school?
If we can answer this, we fix the whole system.
We can answer this question, we can go home.
Look, I'd like also to make just a real brief hakdama.
Absolutely.
I don't know what's going to happen tonight, but I imagine we're going to talk some truth. Otherwise, there's no point. And I want it to be clear, certain people sometimes misunderstand. I look at the world of Chinuch and Mechanchim as the absolute top rung of Klal Yisrael. The people who are so Moshe Nefesh, who care so much and work so hard, generally speaking, not for the greatest pay. And they do this job for us, for Klal Yisrael. When I come to perhaps challenge or refine, I'm feeding back information I've learned from my clients for 32 years, in the hope that we could refine what they're doing and help them simply do it better.
We appreciate it.
I really hope so, because it frees me to be more honest about what we see in the cracks in the system without being seen as a critic of the system. I love the system. I simply do this and put my neck in the noose to try and make it better. That's it.
So I just want to be clear, and I hope that's understood by everybody. So the answer, let's take the first part of your question. Is there such a thing as a trusted adult? And how do we make children feel safe? That was the question,
yes.
Correct? There's one word. If we could understand the two sides of this same word, perhaps we could fix this so simply. And the word is consequences. What are the consequences to a child when they go to an adult and they pour their heart out about some issues, perhaps serious issues, that they're struggling with due to no fault of their own? They didn't grow up determined to be a troubled person, but somehow their life and their story has somehow brought them in touch with who knows, whether it's the internet, whether it's drugs, whether it's drinking, or whether it's, other issues they're struggling with. It doesn't really matter. No one chose this. And a kid is hurting inside. So this word consequences captures the essence of why there are no trusted adults. Because, and by the way, I believe there are. Let's be very clear. I think the premise isn't actually true. And there are many trusted adults and many trusted mechanchim. But I understand the concept. If the consequences of a child opening up about their struggles, their issues, their challenges, their exposure to the world, if the consequences are negative, if they're afraid they're going to be punished, penalized, if they're afraid they'll be thrown out of school, if they're afraid that somehow this is going to damage their own life in any way, why on earth would they tell us? It's the word consequences. But just imagine if we shift that word consequences, and we as the adult, caring world who care for our children, if we shifted where the consequences were, wow, I can't believe you told me. That must have taken so much courage. I'm so impressed with you. That must be so hard for you. I can't imagine how difficult this struggle is for you. How conflicted you must be. I wonder how you get up in the morning sometimes. I'm so impressed with you that you had the courage to come and talk. And I'm telling you one thing, your information is safe with me. If we shift that word consequences for children, what's going to happen is we're going to discover that, and people hate it when I quote statistics or say numbers. Where do I get it from? But I would hazard a guess that most kids will come forward and tell us. The majority of kids will come forth and tell us they're struggling with something. If the consequences to them of telling us is that they will be supported, praised, they'll be validated and understood, they'll be helped, we can hold them, we can help them through that, of course they'll tell us. The onus of kids, there's no such thing as a trusted adult, is because if what we're trying to do always is, and you're going to hear this from me the whole night, I'm certain of it, if the dogish is in the child's mind is primarily on me protecting my home, my life, my school, my environment, my community, if my primary dogish is on protecting my stuff, why would they tell me? They'll never tell me. But if they feel an experience that the primary dogish, when I hear them, is, I want to help you, Shefela. We're here for you. It's true, we also have these other agendas that we have to work out, but we're here for you. Once we shift the consequences of telling to being praised, applauded, elevated, looked at as a hero, looked at as special, well, then there'll be trusted adults everywhere, and I believe we can help the kids. The trouble is going to be that we're going to discover that most kids will come forth and tell us about problems, and everyone's going to come running and say, now what do we do?
How do we solve the problems?
How do we solve the problems now?
That's the next piece.
That's the next piece, exactly.
Once we have that information and that relationship.
Kids will open up once they feel safe. It's that simple.
Okay, we'll come back to this a little bit later.
Yes,
we'll hit
we will.
From another angle, I'm sure.
Many.
But moving to the second question,
yeah.
And maybe I can just add that families and the school, the natural tension, unfortunate tension that exists. There are studies that show that positive connection between parents and teachers and school have been shown to improve children's academic achievements, social competencies, and emotional well-being. So that gets to the heart of the question, how do we go about developing a trusting relationship between the parents and the school? So just like we want a trusted relationship between the child and his parents, the child and the school, how do the schools and the parents and the families work together? L'toivas, for the well-being of the child. Because as you said before, it's all about the children. It's really not, I mean... Of course, in other words, the mission statement of Yeshiva, it starts with the following line. We believe that every child is a gift from the Eibishter.
Right.
That's how it starts.
Right.
A gift from the Eibishter.
Right.
And all decisions that are made primarily for the well-being of the child. So how do parents...
So I'll tell you something amazing, fascinating. Years ago, obviously many years, I was in Lakewood before we made Aliyah, and I worked there as a family therapist. And I frequently worked with family systems who were at odds with their school system. And I heard from both sides. And all I heard from both sides was incredible mistrust that the parents knew very well, I cannot tell the school really what's going on because I know what's going to happen and I know what the consequences will be to my family and my kid. They'll never understand us. The school was saying, we can't trust these parents. We have a handbook. We have rules. They're not adhering. You know, and I hear this from both sides. So I decided to do something very interesting. I requested from the parents and the school, that means the Manal, Menaheles, whoever it was, would you come in and sit with me together? I'd like you to hear each other's struggle. Would you do that? And they would come into the office, terrified of each other. You understand, it's like the two enemies have entered the ring. And we'd start talking. And the premise of the meeting was a very simple premise. I want to see if you could help the school, could help the parents understand where you're struggling, what your struggles are, what your concerns are. And I'd like to see if the parents can help the school understand your struggle. And what we're going to do is have the school tell the parents. We have the school tell the parents what they believe is the parents' struggle. And we're going to have the parents tell the school what is their mandate, what's their struggle, where are they stuck with this situation. And we'd have both sides try to see if they could articulate deeply, sensitively, what the other side is feeling. This event took a couple of hours. By the end of the hours, I can tell you many times, both sides were in tears. Both sides realized we're all trying to help the kids. We're all stuck. The fact and reality is that mature people have to come to terms with is that the needs of a system can never possibly, it's impossible to serve the needs perfectly of every individual in the system. It's the very nature of a system. The responsibility of parents at the same time is their kid, not the system. They will have that child the rest of their life. Their responsibility is to support their child. These two will always be two different approaches to how to help kids. What I've experienced in life is if we sit down if we could just be mature adults, stop being threatened by each other, but sit down and tune into the school's not my enemy. They're my friend. But I want you to trust me. So I'm going to tell you, the school, as a parent, what I believe is your struggle. Where are you stuck with this? And you're going to tell me, as a parent, where you see I'm stuck. And the magic starts happening once you do that. It's a paradigm shift. It gets people working together, tuning into each other. And now, together, we have to work out what is going to happen, how we're going to do it, which we'll deal with the protem later. The first step is to tune in that we're all basically on the same page trying to help kids, but we have two different mandates, two different roles. The school has to and has a responsibility to protect the school environment. That's a fact. It shouldn't be taken away from them. The school isn't a sum of all the different parent body, who's in there. They have a mandate, they have a philosophy, and they have to uphold that philosophy somehow. A parent has an ultimate responsibility to their child. And they must love that child and put that child first. And that's a delicate shaila, sometimes for their local Rav, of what do I do when I get this whole handbook from the school with all these rules, which I know I cannot do. I know I cannot do it. It's impossible. Some of those things, but I don't want to lie either. So that's a shaila you got with your Rav. But the fact is, if we can just come in and tune into each other and say, I understand you, I get you, and go through that little exercise of tuning into each other, that's when the magic happens. It's remarkable.
I want to share something. As you were talking, I was thinking to myself of something that happened last week, talking about the school and the parents working together for the well-being of the children. The mayor of Pittsburgh visited our school last week, and in preparation for his visit, we cleaned the school well. Hopefully it's pretty clean in general, but we cleaned the school well. So I heard a comment that someone made, one of the students made. Oh, the mayor's coming, so therefore they clean, they're criticizing it. So when a lot of times a child comes home and they share something like that. And there's two ways that a parent can respond to that. One way is, this should always be clean, and continue the narrative. A more helpful way for working together for the well-being of the children is to help the children understand, gain a perspective. So I had that conversation with my children. I said, let me ask you a question. Our house is generally pretty clean, but if we have a hush of a guest, do we clean it better? Does that mean that, we did something? No, that's what happens. So similar here. We try to keep the building clean, but the mayor of Pittsburgh's coming. So we need to listen. We don't have to accept or support something that we don't think is appropriate, but at the same time help the child understand, give them a perspective so that trust remains. Help them, and whatever can't be defended doesn't need to be defended.
Correct.
But whatever can be, and I could be Meirach, but that's just an example. Do you have any responses to that? I think we're almost finished with this first session.
Yeah, no, I think I fully agree with you. Look, trust. If the first response when a child comes forward or is discovered with something inappropriate, whatever it is, if the first response, the look on my face, the so-called trusted adult, is a look of pain, anger, frustration, that worked once upon a time. There was a world in which that was helpful. This world, that's not helpful.
Rabbi Russell, we're at the end of our first session. There are two more to come.
Okay.
I'm going to turn it back to our host, Dov Bernadich. Take it away.
Okay. Thank you so much to our rabbis for that fascinating discussion. We will return to them in a little bit. Right now, we are at 74% of our $500,000 goal, and that's good. We've really come far tonight, but we can go farther. I promise that within 2 to 4 hours, I will eventually stop asking you for money. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and ask one more time that you donate to this very important cause. I also want to list some donors right now who've made some amazing donations. Nancy Raphael donated $2,000 with the Barber family team, and Morty and Rifki Rudolph donated $1,000 with the Rudolph friends and family team. It was really amazing. We want everyone to keep donating. Every single dollar counts. Please, please keep donating. We're trying to reach $500,000 tonight, and we're very excited to get to our goal. Now, I was a yeshiva boy once, and besides for still owing Rabbi Rosenblum that knas money, I've done my best to put that life behind me. Being a teenager with depression and anxiety was like being a volcano with earthquakes and hurricanes. I challenge everyone in our audience, except our actual teenagers, to think about themselves as teenagers. If all of a sudden, for no reason, our current minds were just replaced with our teenage minds for the rest of the night, we would wake up tomorrow sure someone had slipped something into our dinners. And that alone should fill you with enough empathy to give whatever you can tonight. But some brave souls actually try to understand our teenage students and reach them on their level, and I personally am grateful for them. Teenage boys today face challenges I never even dreamed of, and they're called upon to grow up quicker than ever. They have questions, important questions, and today we hope they'll get at least a few answers. So now we're going to hear from our Yeshiva Boys School. I do want to reiterate that privacy and the ability to speak truthfully are both very important for teenagers, and we are respecting that. Yeshiva Schools asks our teens to anonymously submit questions for our panel of experts, and student volunteers will read the selected questions to our moderators. Rabbi Yarden Bloomstein is a teen mentor who directs You Matter, a division of Friendship Circle Michigan that focuses specifically on teens with mental health issues. Under the guidance of Rabbi Bloomstein, U-Matter operates on a peer-to-peer model which empowers teens to assist each other in overcoming stigmas and other obstacles related to mental health. Dr. Yisrael King is a graduate of Carlow University, where he received his MS in professional counseling and PsyD in counseling psychology. He recently completed his pre-doctoral residency at Mid-Ohio Psychological Services in Columbus, Ohio, where he worked in a community health setting with both children and adolescents. He currently works as a therapist at Sprout Center for Emotional Growth and Development and is the behavioral interventionist at Yeshiva's Early Learning Center. We're grateful that Rabbi Bloomstein and Dr. King have taken the time to hear questions from our boys.
My name is Sage. How is it practical for a person to be resilient if they constantly have new problems to handle that are overwhelming their ability to deal with things?
That's a good question. I'm curious what you think about this. When I hear a question like, how is it practical to be resilient if a person's constantly running into new problems, it makes me feel like resiliency feels like something that is just inside and not part of them. But what do you think about this type of question?
I think there's two ways of handling resilience. One way is to say, how do I prepare for yesterday's problems or challenges? And two is, how do I develop emotional muscle so that I can handle what today is going to throw my way?
No, that's absolutely amazing, because I think that resiliency is not something that is separate from yourself. And I really like how you framed it in two different pieces that are sort of an awareness and a preparation, and then a plan, which also has a bit of an acceptance to it. Resiliency is something that you're doing anytime you're running into a adverse or difficult situation that might not be a regular place that you would be in, or might become regular, but it's not something that I think is a usual part of life.
Hi, my name is Alicia, and what if the thing that is making me happy / keeping me going isn't accepted by my community, family, and school?
I have had someone ask me that before. And the question that we started that whole dialogue on, actually in therapy, was, do you care? Does that matter to you? Because that really directs the next steps. Does it bother you, or does it matter to you if what makes you happy or keeps you going is not accepted by the community, by your family, by your friends? And if it doesn't, then I guess you need to figure out how to cope with that. Or what you lose, which is something I don't know that everybody has a chance to do some of that stock taking. What do I lose if I decide I don't care about this? And is the exchange worth it? Because ultimately a person's making a choice. They can passively make it by just doing it, but it's still a choice. Or they can decide, it does matter to me. And then the conversation is, then what am I willing to do or give up or modify to still hold on to the things that are important to me? One of the most important questions I think that would come next would also be, does it hurt you? Does it cause you harm? Does it put you at risk? And does it help? Is it worth it? Or does it cause its own problems? Just because something is a solution in one scenario doesn't mean it's not a worse problem in another.
Sometimes I found with myself that I live in a realm where I think I know what other people think. I think I know what the community thinks about me, what my family thinks about me, and I'm not in a school currently, but what my social frameworks think about me. And the first question becomes, are we on the same page? Is that the reality? Is reality the events that happen or the way we perceive them? And I think going into that, it's understanding what is and isn't being said, getting a little bit objective framework. In certain cases, you may be 100% right. That's exactly what it is. In other cases, it may be the perception. And then I think that also goes down to bringing in a trusted adult, someone that I can trust to have that conversation with, to show them my vulnerability, to show them who I really am, and then ask them what they think about me. And I think we're so scared to do that. Maybe we're not, maybe it's just me, to be vulnerable. And yet that's where we can start taking a good look at who we are. Is it a maladaptive approach?
Hi, I'm Mendy. How come whenever I ask for help on how to be more positive and less depressed, I never feel satisfied with the answer?
I always want to see immediate results. I want to see things now. I want to feel good now. Don't tell me I'm going to feel good in 2 years. How do you know that? I think it's about reestablishing touch points and frameworks. B, if it's not working, do I go back and challenge the people that are telling me it's supposed to? Do I go back to those information sources? Do I go back to the trusted adult? Do I go back to that therapist and say, hey, we need to talk about this, it's not working? If you're not getting what you want, challenge and ask for more.
Something that really struck me about the word positive, which on the one hand, looking to try to put positivity in their life or reframe things positively is such a good resiliency skill. At the same time, positivity and depression are not two sides of the same coin. Being more positive does not then equate being less depressed. The best sessions come when someone is usually finally ready to share how this has not helped them. And a professional or a clinician is ready for those things. It has a clinical term. It's called a rupture and repair. The person in this question isn't satisfied because why? The answers didn't fix it. They don't feel fixed yet. And there may not be a quick fix. There's often not with a lot of problems a person might walk into. But that doesn't mean that they're forever, and it doesn't mean a person has to be ruled by these feelings, especially when they start to accept them. They let the fact that they're not happy with this exist. And then if they're in treatment, exist with the therapist. Reaching out for help will likely bring some folks that'll know what to do, but reaching in to also be able to hold yourself at the same time and say it's okay not to feel okay will do a lot of the carrying for you in, I think, a hard situation.
Yeah, I just want to highlight one thing on this theme. I think sometimes we feel like we just have to try harder. Like if I just tried harder. And sometimes people wonder how am I supposed to try harder to feel a certain way. I know Chassidus talks about it a lot because we have commands regarding emotions. But I think sometimes it's not about trying harder. It's about gaining a new footing. It's about gaining a new perspective. And you got to challenge people around you to help you get that.
Hi, my name is Sacharia. How do you build strength in the hard time? When you feel like you're not successful, confident, or getting anything done? How do you float and not sink?
The number one tool towards a teen's development during their developmental years, which is their high school years, is having a trusted adult, is having an adult in their life that they trust. By the way, trusting someone and being trusted on are great tools to resilience. Not to bring it all the way back in the beginning, but those are resiliency-based tools. Being genuine. Number two on that list is having a close group of friends. Those things help. Those things work. Being connected, being interconnected. Other things that work: exercise, sleep, eating healthy. Huge things on the list. Obviously, therapy and psychiatry, depending where and what's needed. One shouldn't look at those things as negative things, but those things work. Another thing that works really well, and not to burst anyone's bubble, the less time you spend on the phone, the better you feel. Studies repeatedly come out that phone screen time increases self-harm, suicidality, eating disorders, addiction.
What is our perception of strength or being successful or confident? I know a wonderful saying that I'd heard from a colleague of mine once is that, I mentioned it earlier, you can't be brave if you're not also scared. So to not feel confidence has not necessarily a relationship with whether or not you're able to do something or you're good at it. Giving yourself an opportunity to plan or to think about what is wrong, what is hard, what is the hard time I'm having? How hard is it? An exercise for this might be to say, is this the hardest thing I've ever experienced? Is this the worst my life has ever truly been? Can I think of any times that it has been worse? Can I think of any ways it could be worse? And then the opposite. Is it the best I've ever had? Could it be better? This gives you an ability to actually gauge, where are you even at? How bad is this? What do you need? What level of strategy and planning do you need to figure this type of thing out? And that can help you then figure out, what type of training do I need and who can I reach out to coach me with it? So giving yourself an opportunity to plan, to be adaptive in a situation, to trust yourself, that even if a person doesn't necessarily feel themselves being confident or successful, feelings are not you. And then to find somebody who can train and help you gain that strength.
Thank you, Dr. King and Rabbi Bloomstein. I really do wish I could go back and let my younger self hear that conversation. I'm grateful our kids get a chance to listen to it now. It does seem like there's a lot of chinuch and wellness programs out there right now. Thank God, nowadays, it seems every other school is being opened for kids dealing with severe issues of mental health and wellness. For the kids, as they say, who get left behind. So I want to say that we hope sets this program apart as our goal of a completely integrated wellness chinuch system. Obviously, each and every institution that opens its doors to these individuals strongly in need of help is necessary and good. But why should a child be left behind at all? What if we built a school that made a point of keeping student health front and center, along with chinuch? We've already started that at Yeshiva, and we're working on making it bigger and better every day. I have a child in the Early Learning Center. He's a textbook case for the kind of kids Yeshiva Schools hopes to help. He's sweet and well-meaning, and he loves his teachers, but he's unsure how to communicate his emotions and prone to reacting strongly and sometimes adversarially. His teachers could easily have written him off. The administrators could have made a strong case for his removal. But the school has done everything within their power to keep him in school and growing. We've had multidisciplinary meetings with staff, counselors, administrators, and parents. And we've been updated daily on his good times and bad. We've made suggestions that have been heard and implemented. I already think Yeshiva is amazing because otherwise I wouldn't be here. But even I am amazed daily at how far above and beyond they go. I should also say that at times I'm angry, frustrated, sad I can't do more, and unsure of how this will end. I think that all parents of children with behavioral health issues are. Quite honestly, a parent who shares their child with their school partners, with their school, partners with that school, whether they like it or not. And relationships with your school can have all the ups and downs of any good and meaningful relationship. That's why it's been so eye-opening and comforting to hear this panel from Rabbi Rosenblum and Rabbi Russell. Let's get back to them now. Rabbis?
Thank you, Dov Ber. Many questions have come in from parents.
Okay.
It's going to be impossible to get to them all. I'll try to put some of them together and present them as they come in. Rabbi Russell, if you could help us understand or define resilience. What is resilience and what is not resilience? There are people who feel triggered by the word resilience. There are individuals who feel that sometimes that can be misconstrued as, let's say you're in a bad marriage or in a bad situation. Just have resilience, work your way through. So the first question is, what is resilience? And then, in the spirit of tonight's event, two halves of a holy, what can schools do? What can our wellness division do to build or support the resilience of our Talmidim and Talmidas?
Okay.
Loaded question.
Look, let's separate quickly. There's, from my perspective, the psycho-emotional perspective on resilience simply means the ability to bounce back. That's it. In other words, we build in a child or a human being the wherewithal, the ability that when you go through struggles and problems and issues, as everybody will, because there's no one free of it, we'll all go through our nisyonos in life. As you go through, how deep you fall or how shallow you fall and how quickly you come back is defined by whether you have strong resilience. The more resilience you have, the quicker you bounce back, and the less is the dip that you fall when you go through your struggles and issues. Telling people have resilience who do not have resilience is actually kind of punitive. It's hurtful. You could encourage people to try and find a way through their struggles, but you cannot tell someone who doesn't have the tools of resilience that you should have had them and now use things you don't have. you could help them develop those tools, that's for sure. But you can't tell someone who doesn't have it, you were meant to have it, now use it. So yes, if you say it's being used, people get triggered from it, that's probably why. Because if you were not fortunate enough to grow up with the foundations, the building blocks of resilience, then you're going to have a hard time being resilient. So maybe I can talk just for a couple of minutes. What are those building blocks of resilience, both at home and at school?
Right, and
would that make sense? Both,
that
you
would,
said holy chinuch, right?
Right, holy chinuch, right.
Holy
What the parents could do, and what the schools could do.
I think anyone who knows, I often and frequently, in fact, probably every time I talk about parenting and struggling kids and how to build up, and prevent the struggles of life, I refer to the 4 S's of resilience. I learned that from Dr. Dan Siegel in his book, Parenting from the Inside Out. You bought the book. I think I've sold more books than anyone else. I have to speak to him one day. But he said it so beautifully, and I've used it and adapted it. I use it clinically. I use it with parents. I use it in speeches. I just think it's a fantastic model that I discovered everyone can relate to. And not only can we relate to it as a parent starting out in your journey. So if a parent is watching this with a 2-year-old, start doing this. This is what you do, and you build resilience. But what's beautiful about the model is you could work it through later in life, rebuilding those 4 areas that you need in your life and working out how to strengthen them for yourself in your future life, in your relationships with your spouse, with your children, with your boss, in life. Work out how to strengthen those. And these are the 4. For those who don't know them, I'll say them because I love them and I'm passionate about it. The 4 S's for home, for bringing up kids. They are safe, secure, seen, and soothed. Safe, secure, seen. The first thing we have to do as parents is provide safety. And this would apply in school too. I'm not saying this model doesn't apply in school. I'm simply saying the primary model for this is at home with parents bringing up kids this way. Of course, schools should support this too. We have to make sure our kids are safe. They feel safe from abuse. They're not going to be physically, emotionally, psychologically, sexually, spiritually abused. We have to protect them. We have to know what that means to protect them from these things. We cannot be naive. We cannot be fools. We have to be honest about what happens to children in life, be mature and respectful that we don't have full control over our kids' lives outside of the home and outside school as they get older. So we have to make sure that we provide safety. I could speak the entire night about it. I'm not. I see the look. I'll stop there. Okay, got it. That's safety. Security. We have to provide a secure environment for our children where they feel secure about the love a husband and wife, their father and mother have for each other. We have to provide the security that they understand the Shabbos table and the Yom Tov table is going to be a place of peace and comfort and joy and simcha, not a place to get verheerd and prove that you're an idiot and didn't follow that week and don't know anything about it. You don't even know what the Parsha is, right? It has to be a place of security. You have to be secure about, purchases. You'll have clothes, the appropriate clothes in season. If you go to camp, there's not going to be a whole, problem of fuss about will we, won't we. That doesn't help children grow up resilient. You could say, well, we'll deal with it. We didn't make a decision yet, if you're not sure. But don't bring them into your struggles with life because it creates insecurity in children and that deprives them of the tools of resilience. We have to make them secure about life, that they know they're going to come home and be greeted in a home that's happy and happy to see them. And that, by the way, if they come home and they finally feel safe enough to come and say whatever's going on in their life, they're secure in the knowledge that their parents will respond in a loving and kind way and not be angry. That's security. Seen. Every child has a unique purpose, mission, and personality. When you mentioned before, Chanech al pi darkei, right? Chazal say al pi darkei, only his derech. That means everyone has a unique derech. Chinuch actually is about extracting the uniqueness of a child. People think chinuch, they make a mistake between chinuch and being a melamed. Melamed and mechanech. A melamed is about installation. It's about putting information in the mind of a child that they don't have. We're going to give them yediyah where they didn't have it. Chinuch is about extraction. It's about showing a child who they are. What is their great potential? What did Hashem gift you with? We pull it out of them and we reflect it back to them. And then we give them the support to be that person in life. That's called seen.
If I could just say, one of the powerful things that you say in other sessions that I've heard is that children cannot just be tolerated.
Oh, well,
that is a fundamental idea that keeps on going through my mind. How to continuously communicate to the children.
Well, we have to spend the time and the effort to reflect upon the uniqueness of our children. Who is this child? It can't be we machanech our kids or bring up our kids. It's the kids. Let's get this thing called the kids. Let's get the kids in the bath. Let's get the kids to bed. Let's get the kids in the car. It's always the kids, the kids, the kids. Everyone is unique. We lose the uniqueness. I have many times suggested that Friday night, if you bench your kids, well, if you don't, you should. But if you didn't bench your kids and whisper into their ear afterwards something you noticed about them that week that was special, about them, some uniqueness. What it does is it forces us as parents to see our kids, because I know by Friday night I better notice something and whisper it in my child's ear and tell them something special and how much I love them for it. Chinuch is about reflecting back the uniqueness and special. That's called seen. And the last one is soothed. Soothed, when they come home, they mess up, they made a mistake. You know, someone left out the roller skates, right? And someone slipped up and they cut and they hurt themselves. And there's the Spanish Inquisition in the house about who left out the rollerblade, like who did this? You know, so a small child paints on the wall and there's a whole thing about who left out the crayon. First, a child gets hurt. A child is hurting. They got bullied at school. They lost a friend, who doesn't want to talk to them anymore. They forgot to take their lunch to school and they come home hungry. The first thing you do is soothe your child. Let them know, I care for you. Shefler, that's hard. I got it. You got a whole Mussar Drasha. You got like 3 books of volumes. You want to now tell them about how they caused it on themselves. You know what? Wait a couple of days. Wait a couple of days. The first thing you do is soothe them and show them I care for you and your hurt and your pain. When we do safe, secure, seen, and soothed, when we do that as parents to our children, they grow up resilient. That doesn't mean they're not going to have knocks and bangs and problems and issues in life. They sure are. But guess what they're going to do? They're going to bounce back. We gave them those building blocks. And yes, I agree. I think the schools should support that model in whatever ways they could. But I have a different model for schools.
Okay.
Different model of building resilience for kids in schools. I learned this, and I don't even remember where anymore, but I read this many, many years ago. It wasn't my Chiddush. But the 3 C's. The 3 C's. We got the 4 S's, right, for home, and we got the 3 C's for schools. And I've taught this in many, many schools, and people tell me years later they remember the 3 C's. The 3 C's are this: capable, contribute, and connect. It means like this. The first thing is, schools have to make sure that what we're asking children to do academically is something they're actually capable of doing. To ask children to do something that's beyond their capability, and I don't mean a little bit, because we're all pushing, we should be in life a little bit, but are they capable of that little bit of pushing? I used to have some of my kids had, some learning struggles and issues. So I would ask the teachers by the parent conference, how much time does it take the average kid in your class to do that homework? What's your anticipation? They say 10 minutes. It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes. I say, terrific. When I sign, that meant my child spent 10 minutes. Are we okay with that? It doesn't make a difference. Will you please mark it accordingly? If I signed and there's only 4 out of 10, that means it took them 10 minutes to get that 4. And they deserve credit as if they did 10. Because they have to feel capable. You're going to sit there and torment these poor kids with homework for hours and hours. They're simply going to hate learning. Mm-hmm. That's how learning trauma happens. It's one of the many ways learning trauma happens. So they have to feel capable. We have to align the expectations of academic expectations that we give to kids with their capabilities. As I've said many, many times, the pride and joy, it's not unfortunate, it's natural, it's human. The pride and joy of most mechanchim, let's be real, is when the bright kid in the class asks a bright question, it's exciting, right? You got someone with you and challenging, and it's exciting, and the Rebbe's face lights up, or the teacher lights up when that happens. They don't light up in the same way, unfortunately, for the other kids who don't ask questions or don't even know how to, and if you ask them, they're not really holding where you're holding. We have to shift the doggish in Chinuch to the average in the class, where the average kid, and then the shoulders will basically capture more or less everyone in the class. We can't have it where the expectations are beyond the natural capability of most of the kids in the class. We cannot do that. So that's capable. And this together builds resilience.
I would just want to add about the capable thing. In a school context, there's what Vygotsky refers to as the ZPD, the zone of proximal development. So every child has that zone where they learn. But he talks about the fact that if you're outside of the zone, either it's too easy or too hard, your reaction is, I need to get out of here.
Absolutely.
I don't belong here.
Yeah.
The challenge, which we're not going to really have time to address tonight, is you have a class with 15, 20, 25 children with various zones of proximal development.
Sure.
So even if you're going to go for the middle half, you're going to...
I got lots of thoughts on it.
So you give us a brief answer.
Invite me to Pittsburgh.
Well, you're definitely going to come to Pittsburgh, Well, this is just the beginning.
Basically, when you focus on, what did you call it again?
The zone of proximal development.
I love academics. It's unbelievable. When we focus on the middle, on this thing, and we get the shoulders of most, those, I've often felt this, we've got these huge resource rooms in schools trying to get kids to do things that's unnatural for them, which just hurts them more and more. If we shift the zone of proximal development, whatever it is, we shift it to the Americas, we shrink the resource room, because we discovered that a lot of them were never learning disabled. They're disabled from learning. You understand? Yeah. And we shrink, which, by the way, saves schools a lot of money. And then at the other end, we take those kids and give them an advanced track where they can go out by choice, if they wish, and have some sort of advanced track learning. Or we can help them prepare all the questions when they get bored for the Rebbe, for the sheets, the Parsha sheets and everything else. They can work on that. There's many, many ways. But we have to move to the middle to give the average child the feeling that they're capable of producing. Otherwise, we lost them. Number two, can I do the other two things?
Please.
Okay, that's capable.
Quick, because I want to get to one more question.
Okay, so contribute. Every child has to feel they contribute something to the school, to the class, to the environment. I was not a good academic kid. People don't believe me. I never got hundreds, never got A's. I was a terrible student. My brain didn't turn on until much, much later. I got 100 once in woodwork. I never got an academic 100, never. But I'll tell you this, someone in my school recognized that. In those days, we used quill pens, ink. We used to use ink and blotters. I sound like, I don't know where I'm from, but that's what we did. I was the ink monitor. I was the guy. They could put up a hand. You could get out your chair and walk around and pour the ink into the ink wells for people. And it made me feel chashuv. I contributed something, and that kind of thing helped me through school. We have to find a way that every single child feels on some way, somehow, they contribute to this setting. And the most important one of the 3 C's is connect. The Rebbe has to connect. The teacher has to connect with every kid, has to feel that connection, talk to them, connect with them, speak. There has to be some sort of connection where the kid feels, I admire you. I want to be you. My mother, Aleh Shalom, was a master teacher. We lived in London when I grew up. My elder brother, Shalom, worked in the education department. He told us once that my mother was ranked number 2 teacher where we lived in London. Number 2. Pretty amazing. She taught 40 years. So I asked her one time, Mommy, what do you think you did that made you such a great teacher? She said, well, when I went into the classroom every day, I tried to conduct myself in a way that every child would want to be me. That connection with the children, because once they want to be you, they want your knowledge. She said it was that simple.
Beautiful.
That's the 3 C's of resilience for the schools. The 4 S's of resilience at home. Together, we can really help the kids.
You answered the question completely.
Okay.
For the last 4 minutes of this session, we still have another one.
Okay.
You talk a lot about the various stages. 0 to 2 is a time of unconditional love.
Yes.
If we missed the 0 to 2 age bracket of unconditional love, is it too late to move into limit setting? And why that's relevant to school? Of course, it's relevant for parents in the home. Do we first have to let them have this stage, however old they are, and only then move on to limits? Or is it over and done with? So the question is, a child comes into school and they didn't go through that stage. Is there a way that the school can provide that? Is that something only the family can provide?
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful question. Yeah. The answer is both. When I work with family systems or situations like that, I'll highlight this both to the school and the family. We need repair work. The system you're referring to, and I think it's maybe better for the people watching. If I just in 2 minutes, just what I look at is like this. There's a mitzvah in the Torah, L'Shevis Yitzara. L'Shevis Yitzara means to fill, the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted us to fill the world with people. What kind of people? So I didn't find anyone who comments on it anywhere, and I've thought about it a lot for years, discussed it with many Talmidei Chachamim, Gedolim, to see, and I came up with this, and people told me this sounds right. The Eibishter wanted we should fill the world with people who are healthy in body and soul. They're happy, they're capable of self-love, and capable of loving others. That's how I view this mitzvah L'Shevis Yisrael. That's our goal. So the question is, how do we do that? So here's the formula that seems to make sense to me. 0 to 2 is unconditional love. I don't care what your kid does. I don't care how much they torment you, how much they keep you up at night, they disturb your sleep, you're sitting on, going to a chasna with your baby on your lap, and then you discover that they leak through their diaper. Whatever, we all know this.
Take the video.
Right, take the video. Take the camera, take the pictures. They write on your walls, your freshly painted walls. Right. Take out the camera, your Sheverbrockers. Trust me, it's gewaldig for later on. 0 to 2 is unconditional love. It doesn't matter what they do. On the contrary, I want to understand the lumdus here. The more they challenge you and make your life miserable, and the more you respond with love and kindness, body language, facial expression, tone of voice of love and kindness, you condition their nervous system, their brain, the child, their neshama, to believe I'm a wonderful human being. If they didn't fight you and weren't so difficult during the 0 to 2, it wouldn't work as well. It works so much better because it's so difficult, and because we respond with unconditional love, we are actually actively programming the neural pathways inside our children and inside their neshama that they should feel loved. From 2, then, it makes sense when we start doing limit setting. We have to. We have to set limits on them walking in the street, God forbid, near a car. We set limits on them walking, and touching a stove and a hot plate and a myriad of other things as they're exploring life, which they're meant to. We are setting limits to make them feel safe. But when you've done the 0 to 2, when you program their neural pathways with unconditional love, their internal experience is that your limit setting is an extension of that love. And therefore, you're doing it to help them. And even if they cry now, which they will, and they resist now, which regular chinuch, it works. Kids cry, they get upset, they get broigus. You tell them it's bedtime, you're right? But you did the 0 to 2, and you continue. I'm not saying you stop at 2. You have to continue. But you do the 0 to 2, only unconditional love. You then continue that while you do limit setting. So even when the kids go to bed broigus because they're frustrated, didn't want bedtime, but tomorrow they don't hate you. Because they internalized it, that was a loving act. It doesn't even dawn on them you would do anything bad to hurt them. And when that works, then they come to you for guidance. Somewhere around 14, 15, they start turning you for guidance because they trust you. And when they get problems and issues and struggles and worries about the future, guess who they turn to? You. Because that's how the system's, that's the L'Shevis Yisrael. That's what we're meant to do to bring up kids. On that person, we install mitzvahs.
So when we come to the next session, we're going to take a break. The next session is what happens
what do we
if
do?
We missed the 0 to 2.
No problem.
So we'll stop here.
I'm ready to go.
And we'll turn it back to Do Bernadich.
Okay.
And in the final session, we'll have a little more time. We'll get to that and a couple other questions that parents have presented.
Great.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My pleasure.
Thanks again, Rabbi Rosenblum and Rabbi Russell, for that fascinating panel. For those of you who have just recently joined us, I'm Dov Bernadich, and this is the Yeshiva Schools of Pittsburgh Holy Chinuch campaign. This is one of the first campaigns of its kind and the only campaign this month not to feature the song stylings of Avram Fried, or indeed any of the Friedman family. We thought he'd let him rest his pipes tonight and take a mental health day of his own. But we do need to make $500,000. We are currently at $384,000 and $274 of our goal, and we really, really want to make that tonight. I want to call out some fantastic donations we've received. Our campaign's excellent copywriter, Avi Webb, donated $500. Itchy and Shayna Glassner donated $3,600 with their team. The Wexler family donated $2,000. Ariel and Miriam Shkady donated $1,226 of their team. Remember, please donate now. It looks like we're short $100,000, but really with matching foundations, we're only short $55,000. We can do that. We can do that in this next hour. Let's get it done today. For those of you who've been waiting to donate, now is the time. As you know, your dollars will be matched by our foundation sponsors, the Hashimi and Mars families, and our mindfulness tier sponsors, Mr. Zev and Mrs. Liba Rudolph and COL. They're the generous matchers for our campaign tonight, and we're grateful for their help. Now, some of you may be in Chinuch in another school, and you can't donate as much as you want to Yeshiva's program because your whole Metzias isn't supporting your own school. We understand that, and we're okay with it. Every school needs its own heroes, and we are grateful for ours. But there is a way you can help. We want to let stakeholders and every other school out there who are appreciating this program know we have a very special announcement. We know that our students are not alone in facing these uncertain pressures and uncertainties. Schools everywhere are struggling to find the balance between addressing and supporting mental health needs and academic expectations. The search for this sweet spot is, we believe, one of the biggest challenges facing education today. Limudei Kodesh and Limudei Chol are both imperative parts of the school day here at Yeshiva Schools, but both are underpinned by Limudei Nefesh. Without a healthy mental state, there can be no healthy academic state. That's why we're announcing that we're planning to hold an open instructional session for interested administrators with our very own Dr. Madeline Nasida, who will guide you through the process of creating and implementing a wellness department in your own school. Hopefully, you're getting a chance to see today what a school that embraces mental health and chinuch looks like. Now's your chance to work out how to do it on your own. Dr. Nasida has had firsthand experience at setting up a mental health program to cater to the needs and goals of a Fromm institution. She brings a wealth of clinical knowledge and hard-earned wisdom to the table, and she's excited to offer her wisdom to schools across the country in this very special webinar. So if you are a school administrator, staff member, or even a parent who's interested in bringing a wellness division to your school, you can encourage web administrators to sign up to our webinar today by going to yeshivaschools.com/student-wellness/. Wouldn't that be amazing? A network of schools across our country all working within the same structure to create a whole and healthy Torah Jew. I want to make a joke here, but I'm actually a bit overwhelmed by the thought of that. Let's all push for it. As parents and future grandparents, I think this is something we should all begin working on today. And it does begin with donating here and now. As I said earlier, every day I see my own kids benefit from state-of-the-art wellness programs and caring teachers. But mine is just one small story in a school full of successes. Rabbi Shalom and Rebbetzin Chana Reichik sent their child to Yeshiva Schools from a specialized public education school. Let's hear what they have to say about Yeshiva's commitment to creating a wellness-informed environment for students.
Moshe went to a secular, non-Jewish special ed school through 8th grade. He had everything he needed there, except one thing was missing. He desperately wanted to go to a Jewish school. We did not know if that would ever be able to happen.
So it's in the winter, and we are going through Pittsburgh for a winter vacation with the family. I drop in on my good friend Rabbi Rosenblum, and we come to the Mesivta for Shacharis. And Moshe looks around and says, "Hey, I could learn here." So I had a short meeting with Rabbi Rosenblum, and we discussed the possibility of Moshe coming to the Mesivta for the next year. Obviously, it was going to take a risk on the child. He had never been in a Jewish day school to that point. Came September that year, and Moshe was enrolled in the Mesivta in the high school in Pittsburgh.
When Moshe came to the school, he was thrilled beyond belief to be in a yeshiva. And every day for the first few months, there were many challenges. Those challenges were addressed through open communication with the teachers, the principals, and us, the parents. We worked together in order to help Moshe be successful in the school and for it to work for all the staff and the students in the school as well. When Moshe went to yeshiva, we were very worried about many aspects of his independence and being able to handle situations in a way that would work.
Because ultimately, he was sitting at home and he's sitting with his parents, and we're taking care of all this stuff from A to Z. He wouldn't have looked at the kid to say he can handle everything on his own like a regular high school kid away from home.
However, he surprised us incredibly.
What every parent wants is to have an independent child, able to self-supportive. Now he's in the high school mode. He has that element of being an independent, self-supporting child of teenage years.
When Moshe left home, his growth went from 0 to 80 in no time. The special ed school that he used to go to, his former school, were pleasantly surprised at how much Moshe achieved in such a short time. This was due to the school's support, his friends' support. The boys in the yeshiva were incredible to him.
And the fact that the school was ready to take a chance on Moshe was the biggest blessing that we had. The reality is that many of these children, if you give them the opportunity, they'll step forward and they will surprise us all with what they're capable of doing.
And Yeshiva Schools of Pittsburgh stepped forward, and we are forever grateful.
The Yeshiva Schools in Pittsburgh took Moshe back as an alter bacher, as a shliach, and he's giving shurim a couple times a day. Now, you may think that, okay, fine, that's a nice thing that he does. To understand that really that's a whole new step in life for him. And that step in life for Moshe is a very, very big step. That now suddenly there's this interaction back and forth, he takes responsibility, etc. And the yeshiva in Pittsburgh has given him that opportunity. And it's really a total step forward in his growth.
Moshe calls us every day. And just last week, he told me, I feel so good about what I'm doing here. And that is music to our ears. Thank you.
Rabbi Russell, this is our final session.
Aye.
And we're in the middle of a question.
Yes.
We understand the 3 stages, but unfortunately, not all of us are successful in giving that unconditional love between the ages of 0 and 2. Sometimes we lose it as parents, and we get upset when the kid, does something that.
Sure.
Can it be repaired?
Sure.
And
so it's not a matter of can it be repaired. It has to be repaired.
Okay.
There is no alternative, or the person goes through life permanently feeling scared, permanently feeling frightened and disconnected from people. It affects what we call attachments, their ability to relate to other people in a safe and healthy way. So it has to be repaired, and it will sooner or later and must be addressed. And halavai, we can do it before they come to therapy, without needing to come to therapy. Look, here's the issue. There's a paradigm shift that simply has to happen. In many schools, I see it happening, Baruch Hashem, but it has to happen everywhere. And the paradigm shift is this. We have to come to terms with the reality that enforcing rules, structure, and discipline on kids with an angry face doesn't work. Can we just accept that? That the old school Tzvei Petch Mahalach of how to get kids to stell zu, and behave with an angry face and a disciplined look and, and a threatening look, that ship has sailed.
Needs to go.
It's gone. Can we accept it? There is a very small group of children for whom that works, and I'm suspect that it doesn't work other than temporarily anyway. But don't worry, no need to panic. Kadosh Baruch Hu gifted us with sfata guf, they call it, body language, right? Facial expression, body language, tone of voice. When we start doing limit setting on children, they will resist. That's why we're setting limits, because they want to go further and we're holding them back. It's not complicated. So we know we're directly going against their will. Here's the difference. In the old school, the way of Chinuch was not in my house, you don't. Or in the school, it was not in my school. In our school, we don't do that. And there are even principals to this day who will get up and give drashas to the school, which I must tell you, the kids find ludicrous. They find it laughable. And anyone who thinks that really, they mimic the principal later on with that kind of stuff. Not in our school. In our school, we don't do that. This is the rules of our school. And they give a whole drasha on this.
Fire and brimstone.
Fire and brimstone. It doesn't work anymore. What actually works is that we give the message to the child, what we're telling you is for your benefit. Yes, I am going to stand up to your willful need to go further than I feel is safe for you, and whatever issue it is, whether it's going further towards the street with the little child, or towards the stove, or whether it's going further, going to bed too late, or doing something inappropriate, or drinking too much l'chaim. Whatever your limit setting, the message you have to convey to the child is, Shefela, this is for you. It's not for me. We have to shift out of the old paradigm of not in my home, because not in my home doesn't really work anymore. What the kid's thinking in his brain. You see, we're living in a world today. We had a segment, I think, at the beginning of this program about technology. Today, kids are aware of the world. They're aware of the outside world. We cannot shelter completely anymore. I'm not saying we shouldn't shelter. We should shelter. But sheltering alone is not working. And the cracks and fissures in that sheltering allow kids to peek out into the outside world, and they see it. So when you say, God forbid, to your kid today, not in my home, what the kid's brain says, fine, I'll find another home. You're actually pushing them out. It's the exact not wrong message today. Not in my school, fine, I'll go off the derech, I'll find another school. It just doesn't work anymore. And when it appears to be working, I know there's probably people hopping mad with me for saying this, because they're principals, we say it and it works in our school. No, it doesn't. It works, you create a fantasy of compliance. As long as you're standing there, angrily looking at them, they comply. As soon as they walked around the corner, they do not comply. So what did you do? You made a mockery of yourself, and you did nothing useful towards chinuch. What we have to shift the paradigm is that we tell kids, this is for you. I'm limiting you for your benefit. I can't let you go there, and I can't let you go here. And here's the kunst to it all. Don't explain it to them. Live it. Act it with them. Your face, your body language, your tone of voice has to express, Shefela, this is for you, your benefit. I'm so sorry I can't let you do this. And when they say, why not? You say, I'll tell you tomorrow. I'll tell you tomorrow. Don't tell them today. You know why? Because you shift your entire parenting, whether at home or at school, you shift it to, you only have to do what I tell you to do if I can come up with a good enough reason to convince you why you have to do it. And that's a lousy form of parenting and a lousy form of chinuch. So what we do is we distinguish between how am I saying the message to the child? I will set rules, structure, and discipline. I will have limits. Absolutely. 0 to 2, you missed the unconditional love. So now act loving, doubly act loving. Act more loving than you ever thought you would ever have to act in your life. Tell the child, I'm so sorry, Shefela, I cannot let you do this. And when the kids say, but why? You say, I'll tell you tomorrow, sweetie. Yeah, but why? I want to know why. They don't want to know why. They want to fight you. They want to debate you.
If you may have answered this question partially already,
Okay,
but
go
I
ahead.
really want to dig a little deeper because I think this next question summarizes a lot of the questions that the parents have asked and ask regularly, and it's a very valid question. You talk always about the rules, the structure, and the discipline, but how do we reconcile that in the context of a school, particularly a school that strives to create a wellness culture, trauma sensitive? So when a school takes a position that we can't allow this child to do such and such, or
Absolutely.
because doesn't that contribute to trauma? And how do we reconcile the two?
No.
Where's the place of where it's appropriate to have rules? And you talked about
it's always appropriate.
Okay, so
Rabbi Rosenblatt, listen to me.
elaborate on that,
Thank
please.
you. I'm sorry to jump in.
It would answer a lot of the questions
Of course,
that came in.
it's always appropriate. A school has to have, as a home, has to have some set of rules, structure, or discipline, or kids grow up with anarchy. That's horrendous. Pera Odom Yevolid. From a wild donkey, a man is given birth. We have to give birth to them, help them grow up to control themselves. So how do we do it? It's the way you deliver the message. I had this system years ago I came up with, and I taught it in many, many schools. Even one school, they did it. They wrote it in Yiddish. It was so beautiful. They made cards of this. I suggested they have 3 cards. Every Rebbe has in his pocket. A yellow, orange, and a red card. On the yellow card, he writes, I, your Rebbe, understand you're having a hard day. On the orange card, he writes, I, your Rebbe, understand you're having a really hard day. And on the red card, he says, I, your Rebbe, understand you're having such a hard day. Please go to the manal, get a soda and a Danish, and discuss with him why you're having such a hard day. And instead of yelling and fighting for compliance and discipline in the classroom, you see a kid who's beginning to, be undisciplined, unruly, act out. You gently walk past while you're teaching, drop a yellow. You teach this system to the kids. This is how we're going to function in our classroom. You drop a yellow card on. What's the message you've just given to the kid?
I care about you.
I care about you. It's not about my classroom. This is about you. I want you to be happy. If he doesn't really pull it together, so then we drop an orange card. And they tell me, I've asked the schools when they did it, most kids settle down with the orange card because they really don't want to go to the principal. But imagine the difference when we have to send this kid to the principal, right? Because they can't keep him in the class. He's too disruptive. What is the paradigm, the traditional paradigm? Chuck him out. He got thrown out. He's ordered and screamed at and thrown out. He's in no shape to process, no shape of feeling cared for, and he probably doesn't even understand himself why he was in such a weird, wacky mood that day and got into trouble. He has no clue. He just did. He's in a bad place. Imagine the difference. We give him a red card. I, your Rebbe, understand you're having such a hard day. Go to the manal. He'll give you a Danish and a soda and discuss with him your bad day. He comes in with his head down to the manal. The whole paradigm shifts. First you get a Danish and a soda. Now let's talk Schäfer. What we're really concerned about is you. We care about you. Avada, you couldn't stay in the class and that's why you got a red card. He knows that. He knows, he understands that. But let's take him out of the classroom. He's not a terrorist. This kid isn't a bad human being. He didn't ask to be rebellious this morning. No kid ever went to the store to get the, rebellious cornflakes and eat them every breakfast so he can go to school and make his teacher or Rebbe mad. He has no clue, generally speaking, why is he off? Why is he fidgety? Why is he impulsive? Why is he angry? Why is he inattentive? He has no clue. And we're punishing him when he has no clue? In the new paradigm, see, in the old paradigm of Chinuch, up until probably about 50 years ago, we gave him such an angry look that he buried his feelings. He disciplined himself with that angry look. I submit to you, that ship has sailed. Mm-hmm. That world is gone for the vast majority of children. And instead, we have to replace it with a world of chinuch where we articulate clearly to the child, our interest is you. We want to help you.
So you're saying basically there's things have changed, and we basically have to accept it and work with what we have in front of us. Basher Usham.
Can I give you
please
one more example, if I can, quickly?
Yes.
A Rebbe came to me. This is one I've used many times over, but it contains the essence of the sugya. A Rebbe is teaching 4th grade, and a kid's learning Chumash, and he says, put your Chumash away, take out your Mishnayos. And one kid sits there, not interested. Chumash on the desk, not interested, ignores the Rebbe. Old Chinuch, Yankee, take out, Yankee. And now everyone's looking, and he's embarrassed, and he gets even more deliberate. Put away your Chumash. Eventually, puts away, it falls on the floor, kids laugh, he's ejected from the class, a disaster. Old school chinuch. What's new school chinuch? I tell the Rebbe quietly, just, Yankee, we're learning, maybe he just was daydreaming. Give him the benefit of the doubt, first of all. And if you see after you remind him he's doing nothing, you walk over to him, the Rebbe, quietly whisper in his ear, Yankee, do not take out your Mishnayos. It's fine. It's okay. Whatever's going on, I don't know what it is, but don't worry about it. You'll learn Mishnayos later. It's fine. And you go back and teach. 9 times out of 10, I beg the Rebbes, tell me if I'm right. 9 times out of 10, what do you think happens 30 to 60 seconds later? He takes out his Mishnayos. Comes recess, you call Yankee over and you say, Yankee, that was amazing. Wow, that was amazing. Wow, kol hakavod to you, Yankee. You conquered it. Now they say, well, what happens if he doesn't take it out? Even better. You call him over and you say, Yankee, that was moiridik. Such gvura you had not to take out your Mishnayos. And you see he does it the next day and the next day. You call him over and say, Yankee, forget about the Mishnayos. What's going on with you? What's happening with you? You call him by recess and the kid starts crying. That's chinuch. That's chinuch. Fighting with him in the class scares everyone, number one. It doesn't do anything good. The other kids are resentful. They're terrified that you've created a milieu, an environment of fear. That's not an optimal place to learn. When we create safety with children, guess what? When we create safety, you've created a person who's more receptive to the knowledge, to the information, because their minds feel safe. When you take safety from people, you turn off part of their brain. The prefrontal cortex is toned down, and that's the place you need to be in if you're going to be able to learn. So creating fear in your classroom actually inhibits learning. Again, in the world gone by, the Svei Petch world, that worked. We got patched, we got caned, we got slippered. It happened. That world is over. We have to come to terms with it. But there are systems where we can connect with kids and still have the same rules, structure, and discipline. All we're doing is apologizing to the kid. It's like you give a detention. You say, Shaffer, I'm so sorry you got the detention. But you have a detention. Why do you have a detention? Because...
Maybe a related question. One of the things I know in Pittsburgh we've struggled with, and I'm sure others have struggled as well, particularly since COVID started, academic expectations. It's a school, but children are suffering and have gone through a lot of trauma. And this relates to schedule. Can we keep these long schedules? Children really struggle with that, and their parents are reporting, we are all parents, mental health professionals are reporting that they just can't handle as much as before. But there are academic expectations. Granted, we're doing it as you described, appropriately, with love. Clearly, if we're not doing it with love, then that's not the point. Then that's not successful. But how do we balance that, in your opinion, in a post-COVID world, academic expectations, children traumatized from what they've gone through, keeping the schedules and some of the rules and the expectations because they're more traumatized and they've gone through so much? Is there, in your opinion, has something shifted even further?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, so if you
very
could
much so.
address
I think
that.
the research will come out and prove it. I know in Eretz Yisrael they had incredible research that was, it was frightening to see the number of people who found themselves happier not having to go to yeshiva, not having to go to school. They were just happier. They'd never been so happy. And kids wanted to drop out afterwards and not go back. No, this is a reality. Sad. Yeah, it's really sad. So number one, from a research perspective, I think we need to be very, very cognizant that the kids were holding themselves together, and they're actually maybe not capable of the strict regimen we give them. That's a technical issue that schools have to be sensitive to. Do the research, take a look at it, don't deny it. We are not going back to the exact what was. Mm-hmm. That's not happening anymore. We've got to be more sensitive to the kids.
So revisit things.
We've got to. But I want to say this.
Okay.
Mesoros HaTorah, in my humble opinion, does not come through academia. Mesoros HaTorah comes through relationship, through connection. The desire and want and will of a child to want to continue our Mesorah is going to come through their relationship with their parents and their relationship with their teachers and Rebbeim. I'll tell you an amazing, amazing fact. I met many, many people in their 30s, 40s sometimes, who were somewhat turned off going through the system. They weren't academic. They weren't well inclined. They felt like a loser, a failure, like they were tolerated by the system at best. They're still frum, but they're hurting inside. And I ask them, I work with them for a variety of reasons they come to therapy. Somewhere in the course of the therapy, I ask them a question. The question I ask them is, tell me something. In the whole course of your career, you're telling me all these things about your school career were terrible. Was there ever a Rebbe or teacher who really meant the world to you? Everyone says yes. There was one. There was one special person. It was amazing to me. He was so good. That Rebbe. In fact, they say, that Rebbe is the reason I'm from today. Because of him. I said, really? I said, yes. I mean, he's responsible, you're from? I said, yes, I think so. If not for him, I don't think I would have stayed from. So I say, do you mind, I'm doing some research if I ask you a question? And you can't get this question wrong. There's not a right or, so don't worry about it. I just want your answer for the sake of research. They say, okay. I say, you're telling me this Rebbe is responsible for why you're from today? They say, yeah, sure. I said, well, do me a favor. Can you tell me one thing he taught you? And there's a silence, and they never can. They never can. And yet that Rebbe was responsible for that young man being frum to this day. And I think there are tens of thousands of people out there who are frum because of that, not because of academia, of how much they learned. We should never, as much as chashuv as teaching and Yesodus HaTorah and Yedias HaTorah is chashuv to us, and we're trying to teach it to our kids, never compromise, ever, the relationship in the quest of installing Yediyah in a child's mind. Never compromise your relationship, because the relationship is more valuable to his kiyum as a yid than any information you ever put into him. Every Rebbe and teacher has to know that yesod.
Beautiful. You remind me of a story Rabbi Dr. Fried told me once. He gave a shiur to a group of people in their 50s, I think, who had gone through the system but never really learned how to learn. So they learned a Blat Gemara, and one of the fellows tells him, "The Chachumim seine gewähnt Taka Chachumim."
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And if you can connect with them, that's much more important to them. Never compromise it, ever.
Let's move to another topic, but related topic. You talk a lot about learning trauma.
Yes.
Which is one of your chidushim.
Yes.
Describe and define learning trauma, and what can schools do to support the learning trauma, in addition to some of the ideas you've already mentioned.
Right, to support not having learning trauma.
To support not having learning trauma.
So learning trauma, you have to understand.
And I just want to add another piece to the question. I know your opinion about homework. If it'd be up to you, you would remove homework. So as an extension of this question, if we don't give homework at all, won't that increase learning trauma, specifically when it comes, let's say, to reviewing Kriya at home? Won't that add to the learning trauma? So 2 parts to the question.
Okay. So look, the word trauma is thrown around everywhere, but the essence of the word trauma, the essence of what the meaning is to disconnect. Trauma is the effect on a human being of a life-threatening, horrifying, horrible situation that they were in, or near life-threatening experience, from which HaKadosh Baruch Hu made us, our nervous system, react in a way that we wish to always disconnect from anything associated to that event. The event was so horrific, was so frightening, I simply want to disconnect from it. That's what trauma does. It disconnects us. It makes sure we do fight or flight. We get away from it, we protect ourselves from it, but we don't go anywhere near it because it's scary. That's what it is. If a child goes to school and goes to school every single day, and every day he discovers that he is an academic failure, he can't really do the work. For example, a 7th grader, right, is frequently told somewhere around Hanukkah time by a well-meaning Rebbe, 7th grade boy, that you better turn your engines on now, boys, because you're going to get Faher soon, right? And next, right, for Mesifta, and if you don't turn your engines on now, by 8th grade it's too late. What is actually happening in the boys' minds? All the kids who've had a hard time learning go click and turn off. They realize, I'm done, I'm finished. That's children's relationship to the academic studies has to be one that is positive and makes me feel I want to learn. If my experience on a daily basis is I get an affirmation of my own stupidity, an affirmation of my own inability to learn, an affirmation of my own inability to pay attention and to focus, if that's happening every day, then the object that's causing micro traumas every day of my life is learning. So what happens is the last thing I want to do is go near learning. It happens to kids with davening too, the same thing, where kids are knast into davening, who can't read, don't understand it, don't really understand what's going on, and are knast and forced to keep a finger on the place and look inside, where we turn that whole experience into a negative, traumatic experience of feeling like I hate this whole thing, I don't want to go near it. They actually lose a relationship to davening completely by being forced to do it. So what happens is mini micro traumas, none of which on their own were life-threatening, cumulatively add up to where the kid has to go in. It's like walking into Gehenna every single day. Who would want to go there? Worse still, we as parents force our kids to go to school into an environment for the ones who have difficulties learning where they're going to experience trauma. Now imagine, you ask the second question, imagine such a kid comes home, Nishnoy, he's been in miserable Gehenna all day, but now let's continue. Instead of coming home to the safety of a home where I can get away from it, where I can be free from it, where I can breathe and just be in a nice Jewish milieu, an environment of love and chesed where I can feel safe, now his parents are forced to traumatize him too. Am I making sense?
Yes.
It sickens me, forgive me. It sickens me, and I feel so sad for these kids. I see these kids every day. I work with adults who were those kids, and they're so broken and hurt inside. They don't want to go near it. They don't want to touch it because it's so frightening.
But homework would be okay for a certain percentage of the children.
So
you'd have to
absolutely,
figure out how to...
You have to figure out... Listen, it's a sensitive issue. I've heard from various Gedolim, they were against homework too. I'll tell you this. Do I have 2 minutes to tell you something?
Please.
There was a sefer came out in Eretz Yisrael on learning disabilities in Hebrew. I saw it recently. The senior Rav of Kiryat Sefer of Kessler, wrote a hakdama to this sefer. I read it. In this, he says the following. He quotes the Shevet HaLevi, right? Zechzad Livrocha, and he quotes him as saying, what is the problems with Chinuch today? He says, amazing thing. He quotes from the Shevet HaLevi. The Shevet HaLevi Zog, he heard it from him directly. He said, Zog the Shevet HaLevi, he said, Mall in Europe, kids, he said like this. He said, how do we define the capacity and ability of a kid to learn based on a calendar cutoff date? Some magical date defines that you fit in this class and not that class, and therefore you can learn this way, not that way. By some magical, he said in Europe, it wasn't like that. The Melamed in the Stadt learned, and whoever came, 3 and 4 year olds, he writes in the Sefer, were frequently found learning with 6 and 7 year olds. You learned according to your ability, so that you didn't have this experience if you weren't capable of doing it, of being traumatized by the learning. Then he said something amazing. He said, and what happened when the kids couldn't stay with the program? You know, they were antsy, they needed to play. The Melamed said, go outside in the chutzah, and in the chutzah there were goats and sheep and cattle, and they played with the animals and the chickens. And when they needed, they went and played, helped their mother with the laundry. And when they were ready, they came back to class. And they just started learning again. We have an environment. I'm not suggesting we bring cattle into the schools. That's not what I'm saying at all. Nor am I saying we just let the kids go and have anarchy. But what we have to do is tune in with compassion and sensitivity and kindness that the kids aren't, when they're not able to do it, let's let go of the angry face, the frustrated looks, the upset and hurt expectations, and instead tune into how hard it is for them. Guess what happens when we do that? They work with us better. Learning trauma happens when we create an expectation on a child of learning that they're simply not able to do. And we do this day after day, year after year, and we expect them to come out happy.
And it becomes simply painful.
It's painful. Are you kidding? I bet you. And if someone gives me the money for it, I don't have the money, but I'm waiting one day. When I get the money, we will find kids and we'll do a study. Well, I don't know how much we need. I want to do MRIs on all these kids and contrast it with rape victims and contrast it with people who saw near-death experiences. And I bet you the MRIs of learning disabled kids who went through the system will look traumatized, just like these other people.
I mean, I've personally seen, called clinically, I've seen children who put in an effort when they were 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. You saw them trying, and then all of a sudden, as it got more difficult, it's painful for them to engage in learning.
That's exactly
Parent
it.
will say, he doesn't want to learn with me anymore.
That's
In
right.
7th grade, I could spend 10 minutes doing his homework with him.
Sure.
One piece of Gemara, a few psukim and a Rashi. Now he's 3 years older and he doesn't want to do it. I think that is learning trauma.
It is, of course it is. In primary, everyone's happy. They come home, Hashem is here, Hashem is here. Right? They love Hashem, they love the Nachs Teva, they love everything, right? What happened to that joy? We took it from them by, the more academia comes in with the false expectations that's not aligned and attuned to where the kids are, the more we take that simchas chaim away from the kids. That's the way they should be for life. We take it from them.
One final question.
Yes, sir.
Because we're running out of time.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
We at Yeshiva are pioneering something called Limud Nefesh. There's Limud Kodesh, Limud Chol, Limud Nefesh. Some of the things you talked about would be incorporated in that curriculum.
Yes.
It doesn't just mean a curriculum. It refers to a culture. It refers to a climate in the school, how teachers interact, et cetera, et cetera. What would you recommend be included in that type of a curriculum?
Number one thing?
Yes.
The number one thing that I hope is included, and if it's not, it should be, I've suggested that there ought to be a Lamed B'Nisayan class once a week. That means like this. Mesilas Yesharim clearly says that Metzias ha'adam b'olam hazeh hu shloisha dvarim. La'asas mitzvahs, la'avod, v'lamed b'nisayan. Guess what? That's a chelik of life. We do the other two, mitzvahs and we do avodah. What do we do with Lamed B'Nisayan? Zero. Adarabah, we create a picture, an image through Sheva Brachas and Bar Mitzvahs and Simchas that our life is perfect, there's never Nisyanis. It's mad. Lamed B'Nisayan is real. It's through being Omer B'Nisayan, going through life, dealing with bullies, dealing with bedtime, dealing with our struggles with homework, dealing with our academic struggles, dealing with a sibling who's struggling off the derech, dealing with life, Chayse Parnasa, you name it. Age-appropriate conversations with the kids, opening them up once a week to face the age-appropriate. And by the way, if we would do this system, by the time we come to the internet, you had the internet at the beginning of this program, we would have a framework that we've created for the kids in which we're now talking about an age-appropriate Nissan. It's not like this scary thing. It's just another aspect of life called the internet, and we can talk about their physical development, and those kind of things. The thing that we need for wellness for children is to be honest with them about their struggles, be interested in actually tuning into their struggles and understanding what their nisyonis are. They are not the ones we had. It's a totally different world today. That's the primary thing that will create wellness, is opening up their hearts, that we show an interest in what is actually causing chaos inside them and hurting them so badly. a Lamed B'Nisoyan class from probably around 3rd, 4th grade and up, once a week. Get trained in, create a syllabus, and talk about it. What are the nisyonos of life? And get the kids discussing it. Don't turn it academic. Please don't turn it academic.
No
conversation, no homework, and not academic.
No tests.
And no test. Conversation with the kids, and let them just talk it out. A free talk it out.
Rabbi Russell,
Yes,
I
sir.
can't sufficiently express my appreciation that you schlepped to New York, the Flow Motion studio here in New York, from Eretz Yisrael, to share the inspiration, to share the mission of your life.
Thank you.
To represent the Talmidim and
Thank
Talmidas who have unfortunately are struggling out there. Hashem, number one, should bench you. Arichas
Thank you.
Yomim,
Thank
continue
you.
to spread the word.
Amen.
And this is just the beginning of this connection. Emir Hashem.
Thank you.
We'll bring you back.
Thank
and we'll
you.
bring you to Pittsburgh. And we'll continue to involve you with our team, Emir Hashem. And with
I want to thank you for this opportunity. My wife and I felt when you described to us what it is you're trying to do with your school, the wellness program, trying to reach deeply into the emotional needs of children. That a school has in this generation, a school has that responsibility. And the kindness and sensitivity with how you expressed it is when you talked to us, my wife and I said to each other, we have to go. We're done. We got to go. So thank you. I appreciate it. I really do.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. Take care. Thank you. And to you. Be well. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Rosenblum and Rabbi Russell. That really was a fascinating discussion. Indeed, the whole night has been amazing here at Holy Chinuch event. We've earned $400,000, 856, and we are so grateful to everyone who's donated. We've earned $400,000, guys. The rest is peanuts. Let's keep going. The donation period doesn't end with this program. We still have till midnight to get out there and keep giving. I'd like to thank some more donors here. Anonymous donated $2,400 with the Sachs family. Yankee and Dvorah Leah Davidson donated $2,000 with the Rita Herman Fan Club. We received $3,600 from Elyon Travel with the Hoffinger family team. And thanks to the Nadoff family for their amazing donations. We'd also like to thank our foundation sponsors once more, the Hashimi and Mars families, and our mindfulness sponsors, Mr. Zev and Mrs. Liba Rudolph, and COL Live. I want to thank the amazing teams that have raised money for this event. While I've spent the last few days bumming around Crown Heights, they've been hard at work spending hours by the phone to raise so much money for this cause. We're wrapping up soon, but remember, the time to donate doesn't end when we do. We are so close to our goal. Please, everyone who is watching, when this screen goes dark, go and donate another $40, $50, $100 or more. We've got so much to do at Yeshiva, and we cannot do it without you. I personally want to thank my wonderful family, my parents, my children, my wife, who every day share in my pride and my joy. I'd like to thank all our incredible panelists. Thank you, Dr. Debbie Ackerman, Rabbi Yarden Blumstein, Dr. Nachi Gordon, Mrs. Leah Herman, Dr. Yisrael King, Rabbi Yossi Rosenblum, Rabbi Shimon Russell, Dr. Eli Shapiro, and Rabbi Moshe Taub. A very special thank you to Mr. Jared Krause, Mrs. Sterny Liu, Dr. Madeline Nasida, Rabbi Shalom and Rabbi Tzimchana Reichik, and Rabbi Dr. Ben-Zion Twersky. Thanks to our copywriter Avi Webb and our graphic designers Mendel Bergstein and Zevi Blach. Thank you to our video production teams, Postscript Productions, Beryl Groner and Eliran Shkady. Our thanks to David Weinbaum for directing tonight's live stream, and Yankee Teitelbaum and Bracha Torenheim of Flow Motion Studios for making it happen. A big thank you to our tireless parent coordinator, Mrs. Chani Rosenblum, and thanks to our production team, Masha Schaller, Jana Unick, and Chaim Zippel. Remember to sign up for our Holy Chinuch webinar at yeshivaschools.com/student-wellness/. Thank you, and have a holy, healthy, and happy night.